One Piece Heaven Defying, Awakening the Dark Lord Part 4. Holy Land Marihoa. Pangus City. The teleportation array burning with strange flames was glowing. Brush. The light is flickering. The figure of Saint Satan appeared in the teleportation array. In other words, he activated the teleportation array and escaped as soon as he reacted, otherwise he would have been killed by Shadow Yun. But he was in a bad situation at this time. He automatically exited the awakening form of the fantasy beast and turned into an old man. His breathing was weak, and the wound left by the blade extended from his cheek to his abdomen. Saint Satan's face seemed to be disfigured, with bright red blood all over his cheeks and beard, and even his eyes were soaked in blood and turned red. The whole person looked somewhat ferocious. The wounds on the chest and abdomen were deeper, and one could even vaguely see the beating heart through the broken sternum. But even with such injuries, he survived. The mythical beast Gyuki's strong defense and vitality allowed him to successfully save his life. The cane in his hand, made of unknown material and capable of clashing with the supreme sword, broke into two pieces. One half is held in the hand of Saint Satan. The other half was left on the battlefield of God's Canyon. Satan! The other 4 or 5 elders quickly stood up and came to Saint Satan. How could you be injured so badly? Peter Saint exclaimed in disbelief, shocked by the miserable scene of Satan before him. Is that kid's sword really so terrifying? His strength is not weaker than rocks. Nashao Langxing's eyes narrowed in shock. One strike severely wounded Satan Gyuki's awakened form. What kind of strength is this? Hey, that kid is not right. Hey, he's too strong. We must find a way to kill him. He's more threatening than rocks. At any cost, Saint Satan said with all his might, accompanied by coughing and spitting blood. More blood gushed out of the wound. We got it! Send you to treatment right away! Maz Saint's body changed, and in the blink of an eye he turned into a giant python monster with black wings on its back, surrounded by flames, and sharp claws on its abdomen. Mythical beast species, Izuna Tenma. The huge claws grabbed Saint Satan and rushed out. After a while, he returned to the castle and transformed into human form again. Mei Zisheng's face was solemn, and he said, Satan can't die yet. Now we have to think about how to kill Kasayun. We must not let him live. Being able to injure Satan to such an extent with one knife, no one in history has ever been able to do it. He has even surpassed Rox, that guy. His tone was firm, unquestionable, and filled with murderous intent. Yun's existence threatens the world government's rule over the world. That's right. Satan must have noticed something that made us kill Kasayun at all costs. Although he is not from the D clan, nor is he the inheritor of the devil fruit that subverts the world. But his strength is already difficult to control, especially at his age. If we give him more time, it will be too late. Saint Watchley immediately echoed, his eyes revealing a cold murderous intent, and his aura gradually became terrifying. Their biggest fear about Yun is his age. Such strength at such a young age. If he grows up a few more years, who will be his opponent? Priority. Kill Yun. Wait. Look. Peter Saint's eyes suddenly focused and he shouted in a low voice. Everyone's eyes involuntarily turned to the screen. It was that young man who joined the battlefield. He didn't run away. He took the initiative to join Rock's battle? Maz Saint was extremely surprised, his eyes flickered, and he seemed to have other ideas. What is Kasayun going to do? Nashao Langxing said subconsciously. Kill Rox, or help Rox. In that case, we can wait and see. All the pirates of Rock's pirates have defected, and with the power of the Knights of God and Marine, Rox will definitely die. Whatever Kasayun wants to do, it will consume his power, Saint Vasily said slowly, his eyes shining. That's right. We will wait until they finish fighting with Rox, and then we will take action to make sure that Kasayun is kept and we cannot let him grow up. Peter Saint lowered his voice and said solemnly. They all breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Yun joining the battlefield. This way, it will be much easier. As long as Rox dies. The 4 or 5 elders at their peak will immediately descend on the battlefield for the final siege. And Yuan! Become the first target first. Must kill target. Valley of the Gods. The wind in the sky was howling louder and louder. Kaido and Charlotte Linlin were also completely confused. What the hell is this? Didn't you say just take a look and leave? After spending so much time looking at it, you still have to go and see it in person? Can't you see clearly because you are far away? Kaido and Charlotte Linlin, who had recovered from their shock, looked at each other. What the hell should we do? Kaido's tone became increasingly irritable. Yuan's behavior really left him speechless. If it weren't for the fact that they were getting along fairly well, he would have turned around and left long ago. Asshole! Charlotte Linlin gritted her teeth. With what Yuan did, even the two of them were exposed, so, should they go down or not? Who are you going with? Help Rocks? Not really. Killing Rocks? Not so good. What is he going to do there? Even if he can defeat Satan, none of those guys down there are easy to deal with. What's more, they are now teaming up to deal with Rocks. If Yuan helps Rocks, he will definitely be besieged. Even 2 Rocks may not be able to hold up in the hands of those guys. If he helps to kill Rocks, the celestial dragons and marines will never let him go afterward. What the hell did he do? Damn it! What on earth is Yuan going to do? Charlotte Linlin was very rational and analyzed the situation quickly. But no matter how you analyze it, it is extremely disadvantageous to Yuan. If you continue to help Rocks, you will be besieged. The Knights of God, Cyborg, Garp, Zephyr, Roger Pirates, Whitebeard, Shiki the Golden Lion, Silver Axe, Achaku, Chris, Ross. Who can compete with this lineup? No matter how strong Yuan is, he can never deal with so many powerful people. Even if Yuan wants to join forces with everyone to kill Rocks, what happens after Rocks dies? Just based on the sword that killed Gyuki Satan in 1 second, Yuan is definitely regarded as a thorn in the side by the celestial dragons and the world government. Once Rocks dies, the first person to be attacked by the celestial dragons and marine was Yuan. Even Roger, Whitebeard, and Shiki the Golden Lion have to step aside. So, Charlotte Linlin couldn't understand what the point of Yuan's involvement was. Damn it! What shall we say? Kaido cursed and hesitated whether to go down. Let's see what happens. If anything happens to Yuan, find a chance to take him away. Charlotte Linlin hesitated a little, but still did not choose to abandon Yuan and leave. Damn bastard! I haven't abandoned you yet, I have done my best. If you die, I won't collect your body. Kaido muttered fiercely, and was really a little broken by Yuan. It's really unconventional. And Kaido and Charlotte Linlin have the same idea. No matter how you look at it, it's not a wise choice for Yuan to get involved. It's even like seeking your own death. But surprisingly, either of them chose to leave immediately. This period of time together, Kaido and Charlotte Linlin could feel that Yuan was different from other pirates. He did not have any intrigues or schemes. They all got along well with each other and recognized Yuan in their hearts. And if Rocks really dies, then I have to build my own forces and participate in the world competition. If I can get help from Yuan, it will be like having an additional stabilizing force. Charlotte Linlin is still thinking about having a baby with Yuan. I don't want him to die easily. The battlefield below. The tense and extremely repressive atmosphere was suddenly broken by the sudden appearance of a young man. A boy falls from the sky. Such a sudden scene made everyone stunned. Yoon? Golden Lion Shiki's eyes suddenly widened, wondering if he had seen it wrong. What is this guy doing now? Kill Rocks together? This guy finally came. Whitebeard murmured in a low voice. He had a hunch that with Yun's crazy personality, it would be hard for him not to come and participate after defeating Satan. The key is, friend or foe? This is what Whitebeard is most concerned about. Yoon. Rocks turned his head slightly to look at Yuan, and murmured something in a hoarse and incomprehensible voice. He suddenly realized that he could no longer see through Yuan. And he also wanted to know what Yuan wanted to do. You didn't run away? Then you can't run away. Garp's clenched fist made a crunching sound. When enemies meet, they are particularly jealous of each other. You are Kasa Yun. Was Saint Satan defeated by you? Saint Garen's eyes narrowed and he looked at Yun carefully. Being able to defeat the awakened Yuki Satan with just one strike, this kind of strength is enough to make him take it seriously. Yun brushed off the dust on the corner of his clothes and said casually, That old guy is really weak. Aren't there 5 people in the 5 elders? What about the other 4? The young man smiled and looked calm. Jialanxing raised his eyebrows, looking slightly surprised. This attitude is directed at the world government? How old does he look? How could he possibly defeat Satan with one strike? Who on earth is this guy? The Knights of God were all guessing, with looks of great surprise. The main reason is that Yun looks too young. To put it bluntly, it's not certain whether the hair is long or not. Even if you start practicing from the womb, you probably won't be able to have this kind of strength. How on earth did he do it? Yun ignored the doubts of the group of people, turned around and glanced at the situation, and said with emotion, It's really lively. Newgate, Shiki, you guys just betrayed me? Whitebeard's face darkened slightly, and he said unhappily, Stop lecturing lousy here. Rox is an uncontrollable threat. If he is alive, you may not be safe either. Yun, what are you going to do? Let's work together to deal with Rox. From now on, no one will restrain us. Golden Lion Shiki quickly persuaded. Although he didn't think that Yun alone could change the final outcome. But he had a vague intuition that he didn't want to be an enemy of Yun. Captain, what do you say? Yun smiled and turned to look at Rox. This battle situation seems interesting. Ha ha ha, Yun, what do you want? Rox smiled grimly, with horrible dark matter swirling behind him, and asked in a deep voice with narrowed eyes. Yun said, What a familiar sentence. I remember I asked you the same question. Rox smiled softly. You promise Lousy that as long as Lousy is alive, you will help Lousy. Yun looked thoughtful. The current situation is really interesting. Stussy suddenly said, You'd better not believe his promise to you. Everyone present knows that you have a secret. Do you think that if Rox were alive, he would not want to know your secret? He is a cold-blooded person who believes in his own strength. Stussy put it very bluntly. Yun has a secret. Everyone knows it. Otherwise, how could anyone reach the top of the world in just 1 month? But who can get this secret depends on strength and luck. She said this just because she didn't want Yun to help Rox anymore. At least we should kill Rox first, and then deal with the subsequent problems. Rox is the prerequisite for everything. His life and death had a huge impact. Of course, that's just in their opinion. Yun didn't care. He only wants to gain the power of the dark fruit. Let the Darkin King become a true Darkin Lord. Yun has a hunch that if he obtains the power of the dark fruit, his strength will be transformed, and he may even be able to comprehend something at a higher level. That's what I said, but I've always kept my word. Yun shook his head helplessly and smiled. Besides, you're bullying the minority with your numbers. I really can't stand it. As soon as these words came out, his position is absolutely clear. Stand with Rox. Rox looked extremely surprised and stared at Yun in astonishment. He never expected Yun to make this choice. How come you didn't take advantage of others' misfortune like those bastards? This is a surprise to Rox. Even he himself knew that there was nothing wrong with what Stussy said. If he survived, it would be difficult for him not to investigate the secret of Yun's strength. Rox also believes that Yun himself is aware of this. But why did he choose to help Lousy? Keep your word? Are you unhappy about being outnumbered and bullying the minority? It's all bullshit. Rox would never believe such childish talk. So, what is Yun's purpose? What does he want? Rox's eyes moved, and the darkness flickered. At the same time, everyone was stunned when they heard Yun's choice. Yun, stop joking! Look at the current situation. Are you sure you still want to help Rox? Silver Axe exclaimed in disbelief. How could Yun make such an unwise choice? Could it be that Un is really Rock's illegitimate son? My own son would never seek death at this time. If Yun knew what Silver Axe was thinking, he would have chopped him down right now. The corner of the golden lion Shiki's mouth twitched fiercely, and he shouted, Un, stop joking, you will die here if you follow him. He found it a little hard to accept. How could Yun make such a ridiculous decision? This is totally unlike his character. Golden Lion Shiki was a little confused. You're going to regret this, Yun! Whitebeard clenched the Kusuno Kiri in his hand and shouted sternly. The group of people who originally targeted Rocks have already regarded Yun as an enemy. This guy is so righteous? Roger was also confused. How could he not see that Yun was a man of loyalty and friendship? What's more, what kind of friendship is this with Rocks? That is a cold-blooded monster. Brother Yun, this is a very unwise decision of yours. Rayleigh shook her head and said regretfully, if Yun chooses to stand on Rock's side, he will be doomed to be besieged by all the strong men present. He won't be able to survive. Roger and Rayleigh were still very confident at this time. If they fight alone, Rocks and Yun would be terrifying. But now, it was a siege by more than a dozen top-notch warriors. No one can escape. That's great, let's kill you too, Garp said coldly. Although he felt surprised, he seemed to prefer Yun's decision in his heart. In this way, everyone can gather their strength to kill Yun. Solve the two major hidden dangers of Rocks and Un together. The celestial dragons and marines are happy to see this situation. Mary Joa. Panga's city. After the 4-5 elders heard Yun's decision through the video Den Mushi, they all smiled. Stupid boy, it seems that we don't need to take any action anymore. Maz Shingson smiled coldly. Yeah, he actually chose to help Rocks in such a desperate situation. Those people present will not let him live. Peter Saint sat back on the sofa and breathed a sigh of relief unconsciously. Nasha Langshing said in a deep voice, even if Yun survives by chance, his strength will probably be very little by then, and he will pose no threat to us. It would be best if we could kill him easily. Saint Vacheli nodded and agreed. Originally, they were all very serious, thinking about how to solve the hidden danger of Yun. But now it's different. Yun volunteered to die. No matter how strong he is, there is no way he can be a match for so many powerful people present. Even the 5 elders didn't dare to face that kind of lineup. Besides, there are only Rocks and Yun. The 5 elders now think that Yun is extremely stupid. The Valley of Gods is in the air. Charlotte Linlin and Kaido used their observation haki to observe the situation. After hearing Un's decision, completely messy in the wind. Damn it! What's wrong with this bastard? Didn't he say he wanted to watch Rocks die with his own eyes? Why is he helping Rocks instead? He is just asking for his own death. Kaido and his men were stunned. What Yun said and what he did were different. Asshole! I will never work with him again! Charlotte Linlin shouted angrily. They had no idea what Yun was going to do. Then he said he wanted to watch Rocks die with his own eyes. I'll have to help Rocks again in a bit. How are you going to do it? You don't want me to live, you just want to use my power to deal with Rocks. Yun's eyes were bright and cold, and he slowly glanced at Whitebeard, Golden Lion and others, and spoke very calmly. We also prepare action plans together in the morning. But now it is a matter of life and death. This is the world of pirates. Don't trust anyone. Whitebeard and his men did not comment on what Yun said. They feared Rocks, but they also feared Yun. But if we could kill them all together, that would be perfect. Shiki, the Golden Lion, was confused and said angrily, Can't you just stand by and watch? Laozi discovered you. Or you can just leave now, there's no need to seek your own death. He also wanted to persuade Yun. Yun was a little surprised. I didn't expect that in addition to Kaido and Charlotte Linlin, the Golden Lion would also consider himself. Thank you. I'll remember this favor, but I've made up my mind. Whoever wants to die first, come over here. Yuan's voice suddenly turned cold, and he placed his hands lightly on the handles of the two swords at his waist. A powerful aura surged from within his body. Reincarnation. Blue flame. The two knives trembled slightly, as if they were very excited. Yuan has already mastered the power of the Soul fruit, and can empower the two swords with spirits at any time. Samsara and Blue Flame can also become beings like Napoleon. He just wasn't in the mood right now. Yuan's overbearing voice startled everyone present. You are the one who is surrounded. Why are you shouting with the momentum of, you surround us? Ha 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 ha. Good. Good. You really didn't disappoint, Lousy. Rox couldn't help laughing, seeming to find this matter very interesting. But the solemnity and fear in his eyes did not diminish at all. At this time, Yun also chose to help himself. What is it all about? What do you want? Rox couldn't help but ask again. I don't know why. He felt a vague sense of indescribable uneasiness from Yuan. Yuan grinned. After this war, you will be the king of your world, and I will live my pastoral life. We will have nothing to do with each other in the future. How about that? Rox was slightly stunned, looking surprised. Is that all? That's all. Yuan nodded calmly. Ha! Okay. Lousy promises you. After this battle, I will never trouble you. Rox laughed ferociously and promised in a firm tone. As for what he was thinking, God knows. Yuan sneered in his heart. Come on. Let's plot. Let's see who will have the last laugh. Of course he knew that Rox's assurances were bullshit. All Yun did was to get close to Rox, explore and comprehend the mystery of the core of the dark fruit. But it hasn't worked yet. The dark fruit is the most special Logia. The externally emitted dark matter is all dark power, but it is difficult to glimpse the source of its essence. Even if Yun's soul power wants to comprehend the power of the dark fruit, he probably has to start with Rox himself. Yun's plan is not limited to the present. He calculated the entire battle situation. Now, it's just planning the first step. Rox, this old man, must explode the gold coins before he dies. I say! Almost ready! We are not here to listen to your negotiation. One of the Knights of God couldn't help but shout. This shout finally brought back the solemn atmosphere on the battlefield. Everyone is filled with fighting spirit. Rox and Yuan's auras surged, and they fought against each other, but they were evenly matched. Newgate Shiki, you won't back down, will you? Cyborg turned and shouted at the rebels of the Rox pirates. Mind your own business. Whitebeard responded coldly. Damn you, Marine, I'll settle the score with you after I deal with Rox Lousy. Golden Lion Shiki cursed angrily. He was irritated by Yun's presence. But the situation forced us to act. Ha! Then there's nothing more to say, let's go together. Roger laughed, and waved Ace to charge first. His actions were like a fuse. Ignite the battle completely. The Knights of God attack at the same time. Cyborg, Garp, and Zephyr take action. Roger and Rayleigh strike out. The Rox Pirates rebels are coming. All the strong ones rush forward. Bring it on! Rox smiled grimly, opened his arms, and the dark power behind him wrapped around his body, flowing quietly, like a demon king burning with black devil flames, with a terrifying momentum. Even when facing siege from many powerful men. Still fearless. The last madness of a generation of overlords. Jump. Both swords were unsheathed at the same time. Reincarnation. Blue flame. As the knife flashed, Yuan's figure rushed out quickly. Only a loud laugh could be heard. Rox! I've cleaned up these traitors for you. Yuan instantly held two swords in his hands, and his figure suddenly floated out, heading straight towards the leaders of the Rox pirate group. The meaning is self-evident. He came to deal with Whitebeard, Golden Lion, and others. The rest were handed over to Rox. Come on! Lousy has long wanted to see your strength. Whitebeard roared suddenly, veins popped out on his arms, and he swung the huge Kusuga Kumokiri fiercely, slashing down from top to bottom. The force is so great that it rubs against the air and makes a sharp roar. Compared with Song Yunxia, Yuan's figure seemed to be even smaller than the blade. But the path of reincarnation flashed brightly and swept past. Boom! Impact shock! The burly man with white beard took several steps back, a look of surprise on his face. What a terrifying power! Whitebeard whispered in amazement. He didn't expect that Yuan's power was so strong. In a pure physical competition, I'm at a disadvantage. How is this possible? Even if Yuan is strong, how can he surpass me physically? After all, the body's shape is there. This scene even shocked several cadres around. They all know the terrifying power of Whitebeard. But now he was actually repelled by Yuan? That explains it. Yuan not only has a powerful devil fruit and domineering power. His physique is even more terrifying. And this is the state when Yuan did not use the shadow amplification. Be careful! The golden lion Shiki gritted his teeth and swung Muku and Ingju to slash wildly. The chaotic blades seemed to penetrate every hole, and they were so sharp that it was impossible to defend against them. Yuan grinned, the knife's shadow changed instantly, and he went forward without any avoidance. Ding ding ding! The sound of blades clashing continued. The swift sword shadows were dazzling, and the naked eye could not see the trajectory of Yuan and Shiki's swords. A certain moment, Yuan suddenly changed the path of his sword, dodging the golden lion Shiki's Sakura Ten and stabbing out diagonally. Sizzle! The golden lion Shiki dodged quickly, and a piece of his thick golden cloak was cut. Dual sword technique, you are not as good as me! Yuan laughed heartily. He suddenly swung the knife and smashed it behind him. Boom! Double-clawed Ross was preparing to launch a sneak attack, but was directly blown away by this sudden attack. Yuan didn't even look back from beginning to end. The golden lion Shiki felt extremely aggrieved. Thinking back to the time when he was the one who taught Yuan the dual sword technique, but now he has surpassed him, how could he feel good about it? Humph! You're just more powerful in observation hockey. Golden lion Shiki snorted in dissatisfaction, his figure suddenly floated up, and his two swords danced rapidly. Lion Thousand Slice Valley! Countless sharp attacks blasted out like raindrops. You know I have a strong observation hockey, but you still use this trick? Yuan chuckled, and his figure suddenly became illusory. He dodged at an extremely fast speed, leaving behind a trail of ghostly afterimages. Even though the attacks were extremely dense, they still couldn't touch Yuan at all. Clang! Achaku carried the huge sword and slashed it down fiercely. Yuan held the knife with his backhand, turned around and kicked, hitting the blade of the giant's sword, causing Achaku to retreat several steps. However, Yuan still jumped up calmly and repelled Silver Axe and Chris, who were charging at him at the same time. Then he turned his wrist, swung, and moved quickly. Stussy, Fireflower, and Shaki were all forced back. Don't get involved in a man's fight! Yu's words fell. The blade flashed suddenly. Conqueror's Kamui entanglement. The slashing blows swept out like a raging sea. Stussy, Fireflower, and Shaki were blown away by the knife and smashed into the mountains on both sides. The power of a sword. Extremely powerful. The three of them didn't even have the strength to parry. The first wave of siege was easily resolved by Yuan, without any pressure at all. If you only have this strength, you will really disappoint me. Yuan put away his sword and stood up, the wave of domineering waves on the blade dissipated. When Golden Lion Shiki saw this scene, he rolled his eyes and twitched the corners of his mouth, but he still couldn't hold back his laughter. Yuan has no intention of using Ba Tang. This is not really about fighting to the death with them. Although I don't know what Yuan wants to do, at least now it seems that Yuan will not fight for rocks. So, just cooperate with each other and wait, and see what happens. The Golden Lion guessed Yuan's thoughts. This is the Oriole who wants to be the last. Thinking of this, the Golden Lion is of course willing to cooperate. Yuan! You are so arrogant! Golden Lion Shiki roared suddenly, fearing that others wouldn't hear, and swung his knife from the sky to fiercely pounce on Yun, as fierce as a hunting lion. Whitebeard, Silver Axe, and other cadres seemed to have noticed something, and they took action again. Each and every one of them exploded with extremely terrifying momentum. But I don't know if the attack was done with all my strength. The strength Yun showed just now gave them a small shock. Everyone knew that Yun was obviously holding back. So they don't mind cooperating. All the attacks that broke out at once were extremely destructive range attacks, and the scene was extremely grand. The earth trembles. The mountain wall shakes. Keep shouting angrily. The sound of the fighting sounds extremely heroic. Yun naturally dealt with it with ease. Even if they really attacked with all their strength, he was not afraid. What's more, now it's just thunder but little rain. Compared with the battle here, Rox is even crazier. Darkness sweeps in. Roaring roar! The scenes are far less grand than what you see here, but they are both extremely dangerous fights. Everyone burst out with all their strength. Roger, Garp, Saint Garin, and everyone in the Knights of God are all working hard. One after another, figures rushed into the darkness, and violent waves erupted and escaped, filling the world with a destructive aura. Rox is at the end of its tether. Now under siege again. Even the King of Darkness and the Pirate Overlord are gradually finding it difficult to resist. The shock and side effects absorbed by the dark fruit gradually made his body reach its limit. But Rox won't back down. The terrifying darkness rose violently like a demonic flame that never dissipated, completely submerging everyone's figures. The waves of destruction that erupted in the darkness became increasingly intense. Amid the crazy attacks around him, Yun still had time to turn around and take a look at Rox's situation. It's almost time to reach the limit. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the aura on his body suddenly became chilly. Suddenly he held two swords in one hand and freed his right hand. In an instant, countless shadows poured in and wrapped around his arms. Eye pupils shrink. Conqueror's Kamui is flowing rapidly entangled. Lightning roars. A powerful punch was suddenly thrown out, with an earth-shattering potential. Yun's sudden outburst caught the cadres off guard. Whitebeard and Golden Lion Shiki can still resist. All the other cadres were knocked away with one punch. Extremely fierce. Yun! You! Golden Lion Shiki was stunned for a moment, with a look of surprise on his face. Why did Yun suddenly take action so forcefully? What the hell is this kid doing? Whitebeard's eyes narrowed slightly, exuding a dangerous aura. Drink! Whitebeard shouted, and quickly turned the Kusugakushi in his hand and stabbed it into the ground, like an unbreakable flag. The next moment, a circle of white light appeared on his fist, emitting heart-pounding vibrations. The power of the tremor fruit. Full force burst. Whitebeard strode forward and rushed towards Yun. He was also confused about what Yun wanted to do. But when he saw that Yun shook his head slightly after repelling everyone, and the wave of dominance slowly dissipated, Whitebeard finally realized Yun still felt that the movement was not big enough. That's why he used the power of the tremor fruit. Speaking of destructive power, the tremor fruit is the most powerful. When Yun saw this, his eyes lit up. This is exactly what I wanted. He immediately shouted. New gate! Lousy has to be serious too! Brush! The young man suddenly rushed out. He raised his fist and smashed it forward. Tremor fruit ability? Who doesn't have the same? Yun's fist looks ordinary, but in fact the power of the tremor fruit has been condensed inside his fist. Maybe it's because he gained enlightenment without eating the devil fruit. Or maybe it's the changes brought about by enlightenment heaven defying. Anyway, the form of Yun's tremor fruit is completely different from Whitebeard's. Two fists, one big and one small, collided with a loud bang. The power of the pure white light film on Whitebeard's fist exploded. Snap! Snap! Countless illusory fragments flashed in the space, and a sound like bones breaking was heard. Whitebeard noticed something was wrong the moment they started fighting. How come the power fluctuations on Yun's fist are so similar to the power of the tremor fruit? Whitebeard was a little confused at this moment. But the next moment, he couldn't care less. Even more violent power surged out from Yun's fist. In an instant, the space around the two of them was flickering with even finer traces of illusory fragments. Shock! Spread out with these two as the center. The entire God's Canyon is trembling. The waves roar and howl. Whitebeard gritted his teeth and unleashed the power of the tremor fruit with all his strength. The muscles in his arms bulged high, and the veins were exposed. Yun's expression remained unchanged, his eyes were calm, and the power of his fists remained undiminished. Snap, snap! An extremely strong impact centered on the fists of the two people and rushed to both sides. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the shockwaves slashed down like giant blades. The towering mountains on both sides are divided into two in the middle. It was violently broken into two pieces. The mountain in the middle was completely shattered. Countless huge rocks fell down with a loud bang. The scene of the sky falling and the earth collapsing is coming. The vibration of the Canyon of God made it difficult for the Marines and pirates standing in the distance to maintain their balance. The roaring waves swept away countless Marine warships and pirate ships. Between fights, heaven and earth change. So scary! The mountains on both sides shook and rolled down, and huge rocks poured into the battlefield, flooding the Canyon of Gods. Whitebeard flew backwards uncontrollably, his feet leaving a long trail on the ground. He finally stopped retreating by waving his hand and grabbing Kusukumoki, and stabbing the ground in front of him. How come the power that Yun just used is almost the same as the power of the tremor fruit? Whitebeard was a little confused, and felt that the power that Yun had just displayed was indescribably strange. But he didn't have time to be stunned. The huge rocks around him were flooding in, and he quickly moved his body, waving Tsong Yunchi and rushing upwards. Otherwise it will be buried under these ruins. You two lunatics! You really want to destroy this place? The golden lion Shiki cursed in a low voice, suddenly stepped on the boulder and flew into the air, and did not forget to control the boulder under Yuan's feet to lift him up. Yuan looked up at him, smiled and gave him a thumbs up. This guy Shiki, the golden lion, is quite particular. When the Rocks pirates saw this, they didn't care about anything else and began to dodge the boulders and move upwards. No one wanted to be crushed underneath. This sudden change directly interrupt Rock's battlefield. That bastard Whitebeard! Garp cursed angrily, punched a huge rock above his head, and suddenly jumped up. Of course he thought Whitebeard was the culprit. Only the tremor fruit can achieve this level so easily. Roger! Let's get out of here first. It will be troublesome if we are buried by the rocks. Rayleigh slashed at the darkness in front of him, quickly distanced himself, and rushed upwards. The threat of being buried by the boulders is not that great. They won't die from this. But if someone uses some other means, it would be easy to never get out. This coffin is too big for most people to lie in. That Newgate guy is too reckless. Rox is obviously about to give up. Roger shouted unwillingly, but he had no choice but to turn around and split the rocks falling on his head, and his figure quickly rushed upwards. Garanshing, Cyborg and members of the Knights of God also chose to leave. Boom boom. The huge rocks piled up, gradually submerging the deep dark figure. After the earth-shaking shock, the storm gradually subsided. The battlefield where the fight just took place now looked shocking. It is not an exaggeration to describe it as broken walls and ruins. The uneven stones piled on top of each other give a sense of desolation. A huge gap appeared between the towering peaks on both sides. This scene? It is especially clear when viewed from the sky. Charlotte Linlin and Kaido stared at the Valley of the Gods that was split into 4 pieces, their mouths wide open and speechless for a long time. They watched with their own eyes as the 2 buttocks turned into 4. The power of heaven's wrath is no more than this. It's worthy of being the tremor fruit. Kaido murmured in a low voice, and had a deeper understanding of the power of the tremor fruit. Is Newgate crazy? He wants to completely destroy the Valley of the Gods. In the Holy Land of Marihoa, the extremely angry voices of the 5 elders were heard. The figures who had just fought appeared one after another. Newgate! What do you mean? Do you want to join forces to kill Rox, or do you want everyone to die here? Cyborg shouted angrily at Whitebeard with a stern look on his face. He was not worried about himself, but felt sorry for the Marines and celestial dragons who died in the ruins. Whitebeard's eyes widened in anger, and he shouted, "Bastard Cyborg! You have no right to point fingers at Lousy. This is all caused by that fellow Yun." "Nonsense! It was obviously you who caused the earthquake." Garp clenched his fists and roared angrily. Apart from the tremor fruit, what other abilities can cause earthquakes of this magnitude? Most of the Marines and pirates on the coast were crushed to death. Most of the ships on the sea were also engulfed by the tsunami. Tens of thousands of people were killed by the power of the tremor fruit. How could Cyborg and Garp not be angry? As for Yuan, in a normal fight, even if it was a fight caused by a domineering entanglement, it would never end up like this. So they didn't believe it was Yun's doing at all. Whitebeard stared with his eyes wide open, feeling extremely confused. He knew in his heart that this was not entirely his fault, because all the power of the tremor fruit he unleashed was directed at Yuan. What is the situation now? And what about Yun's ability fluctuations that are similar to the tremor fruit? Whitebeard became the scapegoat for no apparent reason. Yuan's eyes flickered, and he ignored the group of people. Instead, he stared at the place where the darkness was slowly spreading, and whispered, "It's coming out." The sound was not loud, but everyone around could hear it clearly. For a while, everyone is no longer concerned about Whitebeard's actions. Their eyes turned, all looking towards the place where the darkness was gradually spreading. Dark matter like black smoke drifted away. All the rocks collapsed. A figure that made everyone feel heavy-hearted appeared in their field of vision again. Rox walked forward step by step. His steps were heavy and his chest heaving violently. The series of battles just now had exhausted him to the limit. His aura was still terrifying, but his strength was no longer at its peak. "Ha ha ha, what a thrilling battle!" Rox laughed fiercely, already having a premonition in his heart. He looked up at Yuan and said regretfully, "It seems that we are the ones who failed today." He knew he had reached his limit. Even if you fight with all your might, it will be difficult to kill everyone here. Originally, he noticed that Yuan did not use tyranny, and thought they were all hiding their strength, but now he has no doubts at all. Yun has pushed Whitebeard to such a desperate point, what else can he say? Everyone thinks that this scene was caused by Whitebeard. Yun walked towards Rox and shook his head. "Yeah, it's a pity that we didn't kill them all. How shameless! You two want to kill us all?" Someone from the Knights of God snorted disdainfully. "Such a good situation makes them confident again." Yuan sneered. "You are not dead, but most of the other Tianlong people are dead." As soon as these words came out, the faces of all the members of the Knights of God, including Galan Sheng, were livid. "That's why I have to kill you to avenge them," Jialan Sheng said with gritted teeth. The crowd slowly dispersed and surrounded Rox and Yuan again, giving them no chance to escape. "Just surrender! That's it for you!" Roger shouted solemnly. Whitebeard and Golden Lion Shiki also cut off their retreat from behind. "No matter what, Rox can't get away." Yun frowned slightly. "I am still a little short of realizing the origin of the dark fruit. I never thought that Lousy would lose to you in the end." Rox shook his head, his expression still arrogant and disdainful. He never regarded the people in front of him as opponents. But after they joined forces, they were indeed very difficult to deal with. "Lose? I didn't say we would definitely lose." Yuan suddenly looked up and met Rox's gaze with a calm look that flashed with an inexplicable meaning that was difficult to fathom. What do you mean?" Rox asked, staring at Yuan. The shadow broke away from under Yuan's feet and stood beside him. "Rox, I have a way to get you back to your best again," Yuan said firmly. "What?" Rox was startled and asked impatiently, "What do you want to do?" "Use my ability to merge your shadow with yourself, and you will gain even greater power," Yuan said with great certainty. "This method is similar to shadow form. It's just replacing yourself with someone else. This is not a difficult task for you now. The shadow fruit fuses shadows. The same method you used on yourself before?" Rox raised his eyebrows. The smile on his face became more ferocious and terrifying, and the dark aura on his body suddenly became deeper. He seemed to see hope again. "That's right. But don't resist my power, otherwise your shadow won't be able to merge with yourself." Yuan was very serious. "There is a hidden anticipation in my heart." Rox looked down at the darkness flowing in his hands and laughed softly. "So what are you waiting for? I hope you can do it." At this moment, Rox couldn't care less. As long as you can gain strength. What is fusion shadow? Besides, the dark fruit restrains all devil fruit abilities. Even Yun can't play any tricks. This is why he looked down at the darkness in his palm. The two of them were talking as if no one else was around. Roger, Garp and the others naturally heard it clearly. At this moment, their faces all changed drastically. "Stop Yun! Rox must not be allowed to regain his power! Kill them quickly!" A moment. Everyone who reacted rushed towards him, not wanting to give Yun the time or opportunity to use his abilities. A sneer formed on Yun's lips. "No one can stop Lousy now! Shadow Blast!" 1,000 shadows suddenly shot out from Shadow Yun's body in all directions like raindrops. A dense screen of shadow formed in front of Roger and the others. The next second, boom! 1,000 shadows exploded simultaneously. Therein lies the power of Conqueror's Kamui. Even Garp and Roger were unable to break through the explosion area immediately. At the same time, Yun took action quickly. Shadow Yun passes by, taking down the Rock's shadow. Contract. The power of shadow activates. The shadow that turned into an entity, Rox, gradually penetrated the darkness and merged into Rox's body. There was a dark glint in Rox's eyes. The breath in the whole body suddenly surged. The darkness around him was even more turbulent, as if boiling. At the same time, there is also the undetectable power of the soul that enters Rox's body. Even though Rox was wary of Yun's tricks, he couldn't prevent this move. Rox merged with shadows. He felt the power of crazy recovery, and instantly reached a level even more terrifying than his peak state. And he used the power of the dark fruit to observe his body, and found nothing unusual. The ferocious smile gradually spread at the corner of his mouth. "Ha ha ha ha! Now it's your turn!" Rox's eyes were deep, and he suddenly looked past Thune to the Knights of Gods, Cyborg, Garp, Roger and others who were rushing up again. His eyes were sharp and full of madness. The moment I felt the powerful aura of Rox. Their faces all changed. "No! He succeeded! Damn Yun! If I had known, I should have killed him first!" Cyborg roared angrily. But the words just fell. A dark storm swept before him. Rox, who is surrounded by darkness, is extremely powerful at this moment, really like a demon, without even a shadow. That powerful aura makes people instinctively fear. Bang! The fist of darkness strikes down. Space trembles. Cyborg flew out upside down and shouted with a solemn expression. "Be careful! Rox is more terrifying now than ever before!" Just one punch. He felt the soaring power of Rox. It's completely different from just now. Damn it! He has scolded Yun 1,800 times in his heart. Yun stood there, feeling the power of the dark origin, and gradually realized. At some point, the breath on his body suddenly stagnated. The two swords in his hands trembled violently. You used your soul to understand the original rules of the dark fruit, and successfully understood the power of the dark fruit. The form of the phantom beast species and the king of darkness merges with the ability of the darkness fruit and evolves. Now, the dark and king form evolves again. Emperor Heaven. Emperor, the name of heaven. The king receives from heaven. Heaven is the emperor. Yuan felt something in his heart. His eyes were as bright as the bright moon, and the smile spread from the corner of his mouth. It's done! The Dark King form successfully merged with the power of the dark fruit. Evolution awakening. Shadow Emperor. You can say that. Completely out of darkened form. The darkened form evolved independently from the shadow fruit. This form is more like an inheritor of shadow abilities, and the power it possesses is also limited. But after the fusion of the dark fruit, the two abilities are perfectly integrated, awakened, and evolved. Become the Shadow Emperor form. No longer a legacy form. But he is the real Shadow Emperor. Return to the shadow path. Darkness is everywhere. Shadows reach. All under control. The power of the Emperor. The uniqueness of heaven and earth. As he evolved into the Shadow Emperor form, Yuan gained some insights and changed himself accordingly. First, infinite power was born in the body, flowing endlessly, and the body quietly transformed. His armament Haki, divine armor, observation Haki, divine soul, and conqueror's Kamui grew accordingly, reaching a terrifying level. His current ordinary physique is already comparable to others covered with armament Haki. Secondly, all abilities have been greatly enhanced. The Shadow Kingdom has been infinitely improved, and can accommodate at least 100,000 shadows for its own use. All shadow-related abilities have almost reached the level of the Dark King's awakened form, and their power is even more terrifying. Not to mention how terrifying the Shadow Emperor's awakened form would be. The increase in the domain and awakening form has also been strengthened again. This one also possesses the ability characteristics of the dark fruit. But the most terrifying thing is that the attacks absorbed by the dark fruit's devouring ability can be transferred to the shadow controlled by Yuan to bear it instead. You don't need to endure the pain of multiple feedback. Then comes the awakening form. Since Yuan did not eat the devil fruit, but gained the ability through heaven defying, you can say that he is the Shadow Emperor himself. Control the shadow power yourself, instead of relying on the shadow power. Yuan's strength breaks through again. It is still unknown whether he is invincible, but at least, he has surpassed rocks. Even the means he possesses are more terrifying than rocks. The abilities of the dark fruit emerged one after another, allowing Yuan to instantly comprehend several powerful shadow moves. Especially for the manipulation of shadows. Getting better and better. Behind Yuan, the leaders of the Rock's pirate group looked at Rocks, whose strength suddenly increased, with dull eyes for a moment. They were all confused. The attitude that Yuan had shown before didn't seem like he was genuinely trying to help Rocks. But why help Rocks regain strength now? What does this mean, Yuan? Achaku frowned and asked in confusion. Shiki the Golden Lion grinned. I think he wants Rocks to consume more of the power of the celestial dragons and marine. After all, after his fusion form is released, it will have a great impact on his body. If at first they were a little confused about why Yuan chose to help Rocks. But after the battle just now, they no longer doubted. In their eyes, Yuan is not a fool, so how could he help Rocks for no reason? He definitely had his own calculations for doing this. You just need to cooperate, and maybe you can even take advantage of the fight between Rocks and the celestial dragons in the end. Silver Axe, Ross and the others also nodded, agreeing with what Golden Lion Shiki said. Whitebeard glared at Yuan's back with gnashing teeth. He was very unhappy about the trick he had just taken. If Rocks was not still alive, he would have definitely asked Yuan about the power he had used. Suddenly, Whitebeard's eyes suddenly focused. He stared at Yuan's back, and suddenly he felt a sudden throbbing in his heart. What happened? I was clearly looking at Yuan the whole time. That guy didn't do anything, but he suddenly became extremely scary. The heaven and earth are majestic. I stand on my own. Just standing there, for no reason, I felt a little fear? Whitebeard was frightened by his own feelings. What's going on? Could it be that Yuan is still hiding his strength? Silver Axe hadn't realized what had happened to Yuan yet, so he walked forward with a smile and said, Yuan, the fight over there is so intense, should we continue to act? As he spoke, he slowly raised the giant axe in his hand. Roll! Yuan suddenly turned around, his cold eyes filled with a sense of being looked down upon by God, and his invincible aura gradually emerged. Even the whistling sound of the wind around him weakened, as if expressing submission. Silver Axe froze in his tracks, and when he was about to explode in anger, he suddenly met Yuan's eyes. He was startled and felt an uncontrollable chill on his back. I feel like a hamster being looked down upon by a dragon. Whitebeard and Golden Lion Shiki were also shocked. What's that look? Powerful? Invincible? I am the only one? I have never felt such a heart-pounding pressure even from rocks. They simply don't know how to describe it. But there is a clear feeling. Don't mess with Yoon. Otherwise, we'll die. Silver Axe's eyes widened, and the fear that arose in his heart made him dare not speak to provoke Yuan. Even if he was scolded, he retreated to the back in shame. It was not until he stood at the back of the crowd that Silver Axe realized his palms were covered in sweat. Just a look. The Rock's pirates were so shocked that they dared not even breathe. What a mighty power! Whitebeard remained silent. He felt that Yun had become stronger again. What the hell was going on? He was extremely confused. Moon, why does he make Laozi feel so scared? The Golden Lion Shiki frowned, expressing his incomprehension. Nothing happened just now. Where does Yun's courage come from? Golden Lion Shiki was very confused. But even more confused than him were Charlotte Linlin and Kaido, who were watching the battle in the sky. Damn it! What the hell is Yun doing? Rox is about to die, so how come he makes Rox stronger? Kaido widened his eyes and looked at the battle below in disbelief. Didn't Yun say he wanted to watch Rox die? Why are they helping Rox turn the tide now? Could it be he wants Rox to consume the power of the celestial dragons? Charlotte Linlin guessed with her eyes flashing. Charlotte Linlin saw clearly the fight between Yoon, Whitebeard, and Golden Lion Shiki from the air just now. It was very powerful, but it was not a real fight at all. Except for Whitebeard's last attack, the other attacks were not serious. Even in the end, the Golden Lion Shiki helped Yuan avoid being buried by a huge rock. So she thought Yuan had his own plan. That's not normal! If that's the case, he can just run away now, remove Rock's shadow fusion form, let the celestial dragons kill him, and we can take Yun away unscathed. Kaido still couldn't understand Yuan's train of thought. Everything they do is unexpected. Let's go! Go down and take a look! Charlotte Linlin called out, and directly controlled Prometheus and Zeus to rush downwards. The other side of the battlefield. In the ruins, Ivankov and Ginny tried their best to move a huge rock. Next second, a force erupted from under the ruins, sending all the piled boulders flying. The light fell, illuminating the figure buried deep under the ruins. Bartholomew Bear. Big Bear! Are you okay? Ginny said with red eyes and a crying voice. Bear! Are you trying to kill yourself? Why did you jump down when you could have avoided it? Ivankov cursed angrily, and reached out to pull the big bear up. I'm sorry for making you worry. Dashyong scratched his head in self-blame, then took something out of his arms embarrassedly. I saw this, otherwise he would have been crushed in the rubble. Is this a devil fruit? Ivankov exclaimed in disbelief, his eyes widened. The fruit just now was taken away, so I'll give you this one. Big Bear smiled shyly and handed the devil fruit that he had obtained with his life to Ivankov. Okay. Let's leave quickly. The attack just now was too terrible. Ginny wiped her eyes and said quickly when she saw Ivankov was about to burst into tears. Big Bear lowered his head in self-blame. It's a pity that I couldn't save everyone. This is not your problem, Big Bear. We are very lucky to have saved some of us after those monster guys took action. Ginny comforted. Big Bear nodded helplessly. Afterwards, Big Bear used the power of the meatball fruit to send the three of them out of the Valley of the Gods and escape. There was nothing unusual about their shadows. This battle is bound to result in heavy casualties. The super monsters of the sea have gathered together, and the canyon of God may sink at any time. Here, death is the least of all. Holy Land Marihoa. Panga's city? What on earth did Kasayun use? How could he help Rox regain his strength? Peter Saint shouted with gritted teeth, looking a little out of control. They thought the situation was settled. As a result, Yoon caused trouble again. Damn it! How can the shadow fruit have so many powers? Saint Maz snorted coldly, with murderous intent in his eyes. He was very suspicious about what kind of devil fruit Yoon had eaten. The shadow fruit is just regular paramecia. Even if the development is powerful, it is impossible to have so many methods. Look, those guys from the Rox Pirates. They are no longer fighting with Yoon. It seems that they also want to be the last hunter to take action. Nasu Shilangshing's face darkened and he said in a cold voice. The magic sword in his hand was slightly unsheathed, with an extremely sharp blade light. They are still observing the situation on the battlefield. Seeing the image of Yoon talking with Kaido, Golden Lion and others, everyone's heart sank slightly. After all this time, they are now a group. What a cunning Kasayun! He not only schemed against the celestial dragons and marine, but also against Rox. Saint Vacheli sneered and slowly stood up. In that case, we should also enter the arena. Let them know who is the final hunter. The words fell. The four old men all stood up. A strange flame-like pattern flickered in the center of the hall. The five elders walked in step by step, each filled with murderous intent. Rox was able to regain his fighting power, which surprised them. They can no longer stand by and watch Rox and their own forces consume each other, otherwise Kasayun will be helped in the end. So, the five elders are ready to go. Although Satan was seriously injured. But 5 elders are enough. Yoon! What are you doing? It's almost time to go. Kaido jumped to Yoon's side and said urgently. But he was stunned the next second. My heart palpitated for a moment. That's the feeling that comes from Yoon. Are you okay? Kaido's eyes widened and he asked cautiously. He suddenly felt that Yoon had changed, and the aura he gave off made him feel scared. Yoon, what are you going to do? Charlotte Linlin landed and asked eagerly. She was slightly startled, feeling the same as Kaido. What happened to you? Why do you feel like you are powerful again? Charlotte Linlin asked subconsciously. Yoon restrained his breath and smiled slightly. I'm fine, I just realized something again. That's it. But why do I feel that you are more than a little stronger than before? Standing next to you, I feel a little, uncontrollable fear. Kaido shook his head, as if telling himself that it was an illusion. Okay, it's okay. Yoon smiled helplessly and then said, You can go, don't worry about me. What are you talking about? If we were afraid of death, we wouldn't have come down to find you. Upon hearing this, Kaido's tone immediately turned violent, as if the fear just now was really an illusion. Stop talking nonsense! Leave quickly! Charlotte Linlin urged. She originally wanted to take Yoon away by force, but after arriving at Yoon's side she suddenly felt like she didn't dare to take action against him. Yeah, Yoon, let's withdraw now. It's obvious that you don't really want to help Rox. After we leave, you can directly remove Rox's shadow fusion state. He will definitely die. Golden Lion Shiki saw Kaido and Charlotte Linlin. After coming down, he also stepped forward and said, And now the Tianlong and Marine guys have no time to pay attention to us. Maybe there will be a fight with Roger's guys. Yoon stared at the dark battlefield. The dark power of Rox is filled with a sense of evil. Perhaps that is the true power of the dark fruit. It's not just animal-type devil fruits that have will. Dark will also exists in the dark fruit. Rox is so crazy, maybe he is affected by the dark will. Yoon felt the influence of the dark fruit on Rox, and his understanding of the devil fruit became deeper and deeper. But he has no worries that he will be like Rox. Because I just realized the devil fruit ability. As for the nihilistic will of those existences, it will not affect him at all. Even the characteristics of his soul method and the ability of the dark fruit allow him to even master the method of erasing the will of the devil fruit. Yoon turned his head and glanced at the people around him, and chuckled. You can really leave. I owe you a favor today no matter what. Next, please don't get involved. After saying that, he strode forward. Charlotte Linlin, Kaido, and Golden Lion Shiki were all stunned. Depend on. This guy is up to no good again. Kaido was shocked and quickly stopped him loudly. Yoon! Stop messing around! Golden Lion Shiki said with a confused look on his face. Yoon, what exactly are you going to do? He had no idea what Yoon wanted to do. Sometimes I help this, sometimes I help that. You don't want to be a good person, do you? The young man's steps did not pause at all, and only the chuckle with unquestionable and strong confidence spread with the wind. I'm going to take over the battlefield. I'm taking over the battlefield. As soon as these words came out, Kaido just froze in place, his brain going blank. Are you crazy? Shiki the Golden Lion pulled his lips and yelled in confusion. What is this bastard going to do? He's going to take over the battlefield? Rox isn't dead yet, why would he take over? Now he's just sharing the burden with that bastard Rox. Firepower? Charlotte Linlin clenched her fists, feeling helpless and angry. Why does this guy Yuan seem to be so ignorant of life and death? You have to get involved in a battle whose outcome is already decided. Looking for death? They were all stunned by Yuan's sudden action. Silver Axe whispered to the other cadres with lingering fear. Do you feel that Yuan seems to have become a different person? The look in his eyes just now. This is a real monster. I wonder how he trained himself. Achaku couldn't help but sigh. But if he rushes forward like this now, he will probably become the target of public criticism. The celestial dragons and marines will not let him go. The situation is clear, why do you have to rush forward and die? Yeah, even though Rox has regained his strength, it looks like he can't hold on for long. There are too many people on the opposite side. Shaki took a puff of cigarette and said in a low voice. Rox is powerful, undeniable. But there are too many people on the other side. With top-level masters like Garanshing, Garp, and Roger here, even if there's one more Yuan, it probably won't change anything. Stussy's eyes flickered as he stared at Yuan's back in a daze, not knowing what he was thinking. I don't care about that anymore. As soon as Rox dies, I will return to Amazon immediately. Flame Flower said with a frightened look on her face. Although they are all famous pirates in the sea. But in a battle of this magnitude, they can only be supporting roles. Especially just now, Yunaha chopped 3 of them away with one knife, which left a big shadow on Flame Flower. She vowed to run the Kingdom of Daughters honestly and never take risks again. I hope there won't be a second Rox. Chris from the Four-Handed Clan said in a muffled voice. After hearing this, everyone fell silent. Ultimately, this is what they are most worried about. If Rox dies and Yuan comes, it won't make any difference whether Rox dies or not. What exactly does he want to do? Whitebeard looked at the boy's back with burning eyes and a serious mood. He increasingly felt that Yun had some unspeakable secret. A fluctuation similar to the ability of the tremor fruit. The arrogance that was revealed just now. This made Whitebeard unable to see through Yun. The voice from behind failed to stop the boy. In the endless darkness, Rock's crazy roar was heard. The terrifying power of the entanglement was devastating. Figures intertwined. Some people flew backwards, while others rushed forward regardless of everything. Suddenly, Cyborg sensed that Yuan was approaching and immediately shouted, "That guy is here again." Those guys didn't take action yet. It seems they want to wait until both of us are defeated before taking action. One of the Knights of God shouted angrily. Don't pay attention to them. As long as Rox is killed, no one can escape. Jialanxing said in a firm tone. He believes that the 5 elders must be paying attention to the Valley of the Gods. Even if Saint Satan is seriously injured, the other 4-5 elders are enough to change the situation. They are not afraid of the other members of the Rock's pirates taking action in the end. So that's what they do. Just completely kill Rocks. Cyborg. Go stop that guy. Jialin Xing turned around and shouted at Cyborg, who was knocked back by Rocks. Just delay him, we will kill Rocks and then deal with him. Leave it to me. Gonggu's expression turned stern and he responded firmly. He knew that Yuan was very strong, but if it was just to delay time, he was confident that he could do it. Brush. Gang Gukong's burly figure, as big as a mountain, emerged from the darkness and rushed towards the young man who was walking slowly towards him. Although I don't know what you want to do, I won't let you go any further. Gang Gukong roared and charged like a ferocious beast. Yuan raised his eyes slightly and said softly, "Don't get in the way." The words are about to fall. The tone was calm but filled with an indescribable sense of oppression. It was like an emperor's order, and no one dared to disobey. Gang Gukong frowned slightly, feeling that there was something strange about Yuan. He clearly didn't exude any might, but I always felt frightened when I looked at him. What was going on? Gang Gukong was wondering, and the next second he suddenly started and sensed a sense of crisis coming from below. Don't care about anything else. Steel Bone quickly twisted his body and retreated more than 10 meters to create some distance. What? He kept his distance, steadied himself, and immediately looked back at where he was just now. There was an extremely deep shadow somewhere, which seemed to absorb all the surrounding light. Under Cyborg's astonished gaze, the shadow suddenly broke away from the ground and took shape. Convert from 2D to 3D. The shadows slowly moved, changing their shapes. 6 sharp and huge spider legs appeared, and then the shape of a bull's head appeared. Cyborg's eyes shrank fiercely, his pupils trembled like an earthquake, and he shouted in shock. This is Gyuki? The huge shadow monster in front of him, isn't it the devil fruit ability form of Sartan that was defeated in the Valley of God just now? How is it possible to transform into a shadow form? Steel Bone was stunned at that time. Shadow in the form of Gyuki? How did he do that? Jialin Xing noticed the changes here and his face changed drastically. Is it Satan's shadow? Garp was shocked, but quickly denied it. No, the bullhead is not Satan's appearance. This is the form he simulated with the shadow. Shadow Gyuki takes on the appearance of Gyuki, but the shape of his head is significantly different from that of Satan. Shadow simulation? Why does this shadow's aura resemble the dark fruit? Rock's hoarse and low voice floated out from the darkness, sounding a little surprised. He sensed the fluctuations in Shadow Gyuki's abilities, and his uneasiness grew stronger. Is it the ability of the shadow fruit that was simulated? Gang Gukong frowned and immediately shouted. Don't even think about stopping me with that. He rushed out with a punch, hitting the Shadow Gyuki. How strong can the form simulated by the fruit ability be? Cyborg thought to himself. He had no idea that the Shadow Gyuki in front of him was the real shadow that possessed the power of Gyuki. Boom! Shadow Gyuki stepped down. It collided violently with the steel bone fist, causing a loud roar. Bang, bang. Shadow Gyuki took a few steps back. Gang Gukong was also unable to maintain his figure under the huge impact and retreated uncontrollably. What? The power of shadow is so strong? The steel bone was shaking violently, and his face changed drastically, looking very ugly. The power of this Shadow Gyuki is beyond expectation. He even feels like a real Gyuki user. How is this possible? Before Gang Gukong could finish his thought, 2 huge dark shadows suddenly appeared and enveloped him. Shadow Blue Dragon. Shadow Mammoth. Yuan finally displayed his abilities without any scruples. Fruit ability granting. Creates shadows that take on animal form. Moreover, the shadows that have been fused with the power of the devil fruit have all been specially blessed by the shadow power of Un. Their combat power is very strong. Cyborg's eyes suddenly narrowed in shock. His feet suddenly exploded and he quickly dodged the charge of the Shadow Mammoth and the crush of the Shadow Azure Dragon. What kind of power is this? How can the shadow fruit create the forms of other devil fruit users? Cyborg roared in frustration. Bullshit shadow simulation. This shadow is clearly similar to a real ability user. Such a sudden change caused the people besieging Rox to stop and look at the three huge shadows that appeared on the battlefield with curiosity. That's my blue dragon form? How did Yuan do that? My shadow is still here. Kaido looked at the huge shadow blue dragon that looked exactly like him in confusion, his mouth wide open. My own shadow is clearly right under my feet. What's with that dark shadow in the sky? Simulation? Or what? Shiki the Golden Lion stared in disbelief and said, Is Yun's ability a little too abnormal? These abilities, and the power fluctuations of the tremor fruit just now. Whitebird suddenly had a terrible idea, and his hands and feet instantly became cold. Could it be that Yun has mastered their devil fruit abilities? But one person can only eat one devil fruit. Moreover, it is unique. There can't possibly be two identical devil fruit abilities. That's why Whitebird was so shocked. What's going on with those things? How can a shadow have such a strong aura fluctuation? Roger frowned and turned his head to look in disbelief. Rayleigh held his glasses and said solemnly, How far has that fellow Yun developed the shadow fruit? The first thought that came to his mind was that these shadows were created by the special ability of the shadow fruit. I never thought that there would be the blessing of the original devil fruit ability. Could it be shadow replication? How the hell is it possible that the shadow fruit can do this? Garp looked confused. Judging from Cyborg's performance just now, these shadows are definitely not as simple as ordinary simulations. They are definitely beyond expectations and powerful enough to catch Cyborg off guard. But, is this really the ability of the shadow fruit? Garp was already beginning to doubt, and couldn't help but turn his head to look at the figure that gradually emerged from the darkness, sneering. Rox, what kind of fruit did you give him? You must regret giving such a powerful devil fruit to someone else like this. What Lousy gave him was the shadow fruit. Rox was ridiculed, the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, but his eyes were full of gloom. He doesn't understand it now. The shadow fruit, isn't it just a fucking regular paramecia? The shadow can merge with itself, and it can also merge with other people's shadows, and can also make other people's shadows merge with others. All shadows condense into armor. The awakened form can even summon a domain. Rox had tolerated the previous 8 gates abilities. It means that although it is a bit outrageous, it is still acceptable. But now, a devil fruit user who directly transforms into a shadow form, isn't that too much? Even Rox himself began to doubt whether what he gave to Un was really the shadow fruit? Or, did Yun really eat the shadow fruit? 3 huge shadows forced Gangukan back. Gangukan was still planning to stop Yuan, but Yuan didn't do anything. He just summoned 3 shadows to prevent him from getting close. Yuan walked in front of the crowd and stopped. Poised and composed may be a little difficult to describe. The strongest feeling is the calmness of incomparable confidence, and the powerful aura emanating from the inside out makes people feel afraid. What's up with the shapes of these shadows? This can't be achieved through simple imitation. Garp clenched his fists, and couldn't help asking. Yuan smiled calmly. You know nothing about the power of shadows. You. Garp raised his brows and a hint of anger flashed across his face. This is clearly a mockery of them. Oh? What about the power fluctuations emitted by the shadow? Yuan, don't tell me that your shadow can even imitate the power of the dark fruit. Rox took a step forward, darkness flowing through his body as he walked in front of Yuan, staring at Yuan with cold eyes without any emotion. You'd better give Lousy an explanation. The darkness behind Rox suddenly shook, and several streams of dark matter flowed and floated, locking onto Yuan like an evil and vicious snake from hell. Strong hostility is released from Rox, directed towards Yuan. Jialan Xing and the others looked at each other with a frown, not knowing why Rox suddenly turned against Yuan. Was it because of Yuan's ability? But they undoubtedly preferred to see Rox and Yuan become enemies, so they didn't make any noise to interrupt for a while. Explain? You are not worthy of my explanation now, Yuan said coldly, his eyes calm and unyielding. Rox snorted indifferently, seemingly surprised by Yuan's sudden change of attitude. There was also great dissatisfaction in the voice. The pupils filled with darkness suddenly shrank. Conqueror's domineering. Release. However, Yuan's eyes were as bright as the stars and the moon. The shadow form did not affect him at all. The pupils contract slightly. Conqueror's Kamui. Instant sweep. Two overwhelming Conqueror's auras rise up into the sky. Then, like peerless enemies, the two terrifying auras collided fiercely. The dark thunder tears everything around. The wind is blowing wildly. Even Roger, Garp and others found it difficult to open their eyes. The sky is falling apart. The dark clouds in the sky rolled and were violently cut off, forming a deep abyss in the sky. The entire God's Canyon shook violently again. The waves roared as if they were going to swallow up the entire island. The Marine and the pirates who were lucky enough to survive felt like they were in hell. They rolled their eyes and fainted in the excitement. Let's do it! Charlotte Linlin endured the impact of the spirit, and her face suddenly darkened. Yuan. Get started with rocks. This is the result they least want to see. In a destructive storm. Yuan's figure suddenly floated in the air until it was in midair. Invisibly, he was looking down at everyone below. The two extremely strong Conqueror's collision storms lasted nearly a minute before gradually weakening. Cough, cough, cough. Rox took a step back and coughed violently twice. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. His face was extremely gloomy, and there was raging anger burning in his dark pupils. You've been deceiving Lousy! Rox roared fiercely in unwillingness. This is the first time he and Oon have fought each other. It was also the first time that Rox truly felt the unmatched and powerful pressure from Oon. The feeling of being unable to resist made him furious. But something even more shocking happened to him. Rox raised his palm and pointed it at the figure in the air, with a dark vortex flowing in his palm. Any person with special abilities cannot use their abilities in the face of the dark fruit. The crazy smile on Rox's face revealed his brutality. The power of the dark fruit is activated. The next moment, Yoon didn't respond. Rox's heart seemed to skip a beat. Dark vortex enhanced. Start again. The young man standing in the air still had no reaction, and the smile on the corner of his mouth seemed to carry a hint of sarcasm. Rox froze in place for a moment, sinking completely into the dark abyss. There was blood on the corner of Rox's mouth, and his heart was like a raging storm. Dark fruit. It didn't work on Oon. Impossible! Rox's heart suddenly trembled, his chest heaving violently, his face grim. What's wrong with you? How come the dark fruit has no effect on you? The dark fruit can restrain all devil fruit users. It can attract the devil fruit ability user, and after contact, it can make the devil fruit ability user unable to use the devil fruit ability. But it didn't work on Yuan. He is clearly the user of the shadow fruit. Why do you ignore the ability of the dark fruit? Rox simply couldn't understand. Not only is Rox incomprehensible. After he said this, Jailan Sheng, Roger, Garp and others were all visibly stunned. Rox, what are you up to? Jailan Sheng had a gloomy face and was deeply skeptical of Rox's words. Who doesn't know the strength of Rox? How could the dark fruit be ineffective against Yun? Unless Yun is not a devil fruit user. But no matter how you look at it, Yun is definitely a devil fruit user. So the first person that Jailan Sheng suspected was Rox. Don't be ridiculous, Rox. Lousy doesn't believe that your dark fruit ability will have no effect on devil fruit users. Garp's tone was very firm. He just didn't believe it. There is no way to believe it. Will the dark fruit become ineffective? It's bullshit. Roger narrowed his eyes, subconsciously raised his head slightly and looked at the young man standing in the air. He felt a little nervous for no reason and said something inexplicable. What if he's not an ordinary devil fruit user? If? Jailan Sheng and Garp were slightly stunned, with a hint of surprise flashing across their faces. Is there a devil fruit more special than the dark fruit? Garp frowned, but couldn't think of any mysterious devil fruit that he didn't know about. It's not the legendary devil fruit. What's going on? Jialanxing whispered with a headache, and then his eyes became sharp, and he shouted at the figure in the air. Boy, who are you? What devil fruit ability? As you can see, the shadow fruit. Yuan opened his palms, and a layer of illusory shadow suddenly dissipated, like a flame surging in the wind, and in an instant it turned into a night-like existence covering the entire Valley of Gods. The oppressive feeling brought by the shadow immediately made everyone feel uncomfortable. It was a dominance that made people irresistible. Jialanxing's eyes narrowed and veins bulged on his forehead. He wouldn't believe what Yuan said. Shadow fruit? Can the shadow fruit have this kind of power? Only ghosts believe it. You bastard, you've been deceiving Lousy. This isn't the shadow fruit at all. Rox roared through his defense, his expression becoming more ferocious. He always thinks he is the one in control. Nowadays. But he was viciously plotted against by Yuan. How could he swallow this? His arm shook suddenly, and a dark aura billowing like smoke rose into the sky. Even the Shadow Realm could not suppress his outburst. Bang! Rox stomped his feet suddenly and rushed towards Yuan like a cannonball, with dark power surging around him, emitting an extremely evil and terrifying aura. Are you finally going to attack me? Yuan's face was calm. He reached out to touch the two swords at his waist and held down the restless weapons. A layer of illusory shadow suddenly surged out from his body. The shadows flow, like wind and fire, ethereal and invisible. It seems like an illusory image, but it is full of real oppression. Shadow Emperor form. Open! Yun's aura is fully revealed. The whole person seemed to be suddenly enveloped in a layer of dark purple light, and the outlined parts of the body exuded an extremely deep purple color. A layer of noble purple luster like gold flows on the surface of the body, dazzling. Surrounded by a crystal-clear illusory purple light. The shadows flowed layer by layer, combining with the purple luster, just like blood flowing on the surface of the body, or like a layer of noble purple gold armor or an emperor's robe. Purple gold light lingered above his head, like an emperor's crown showing the emperor's majesty. The boundless illusory shadows trembled slightly, and paid homage to the emperor. The howling sharp winds around them dissipated naturally when they reached the young man wrapped in dark purple light, not daring to touch him at all. Depressing shadow. A dazzling purple figure. What a stark contrast at this moment. Rock's dark fruit makes his aura full of evil and crazy tyranny. But Yuan possesses the power of the dark fruit. But it is completely different from Rock's. Yuan only grasps the essential power, which has nothing to do with the devil fruit. Therefore, even if a deep, dark shadow gathered on him, it was indeed a power sublimated to the extreme. Bathed in purple gold luster. The power of the Emperor. Majestic, holy, powerful. Just like the god who controls the laws at the end of power, he is admired and respected by everyone. What kind of power is this? Rock's heart trembled violently, and a trace of unbelievable panic flashed in his dark eyes. The aura of Yun. There is no shadow or dark power. Just pure power. The manifestation of the purest power. What about the sun god? You still need to bow to me when you see me now. This moment. Everyone looked up at the deep purple figure in the sky and was stunned. Why is that guy's aura so terrifying? Whitebeard's face was gloomy, and his heart was pounding. Even he felt an almost irresistible sense of oppression. This is just a release of momentum. That would have such an impact on him. It is even more difficult to imagine that Yun's strength has reached such a level. I said something was wrong with Yuan! Silver Axe screamed loudly and stepped back involuntarily. He said that the look in Yuan's eyes just now frightened him. It was definitely not that simple. Now I finally understand. Yuan also hides his strength. Damn, this is hidden too deep. What the hell is going on? The golden lion Shiki opened his mouth wide with an extremely wonderful expression. They had no idea that Yun had just awakened such a powerful power. No wonder Yun does whatever he wants, Kaido murmured in a low voice. Kaido thought that Yun was courting death by doing this all the time. Now it seems that he really didn't take these famous sea monsters seriously. And more confident. But what Kaido couldn't figure out was, when did Yun become so strong? It seemed that since the defeat to the warring states, every time Yun attacked, he would end the battle with one blow. His strength has become an unfathomable abyss. This is so perverted. Why didn't this bastard tell you earlier? Charlotte Linlin cursed. If they had known that Yun was so strong, they would have fearlessly made a scene. Why would you even think of running away? Roger, Garp and the others were all terrified and their bodies unconsciously tensed up. No wonder he was able to defeat Satan. Jialin Xing muttered in shock. He never took Un seriously, even though Un defeated Satan. After all, he is old, and no matter how strong he is, he cannot fight against the world government alone. Especially after defeating Gyuki Satan, how could there be no consumption? But at this time, we witnessed that Yun was still extremely powerful. He was almost numb. If I had known earlier how powerful Un was, why would I have joined forces to fight Rox? We should team up with Rox to kill him first. Asshole! The young man in the purple light slowly raised his fist. Suddenly it smashed towards the surging darkness below. Call! A strong gust of wind rushed out instantly. At that moment, it's as if all the air has been sucked out of it. Countless illusory shadows formed a storm at this moment, and swept out along with the fists. Boom! Two fists bump. Shadows and darkness collided with each other. It's like two streams of ink of completely different colors are constantly annihilating, pulling, and devouring each other. Rox's expression changed drastically. He clearly sensed that the power of the dark fruit was at a disadvantage. The endless darkness that erupted from me was being gradually eroded, eaten away, swallowed up by the seemingly illusory shadow. This is impossible! How could you devour the power of the dark fruit? Rox was so shocked that the dark aura all over his body began to shake violently. The dark fruit can devour attacks and everything. How could it be possible that he was swallowed by Yen's shadow now? What is going on? What kind of devil fruit did you eat? Rox's unwilling roar shook my eardrums. Even when he was besieged just now, Rox had never lost his composure like this. You can see how shocked we were at that moment. Yuan's ability completely stunned him. He always thought that he possessed the dark fruit, and could easily control Yuan, so even though Yuan grew very fast, he never took it too seriously. This is the first time the two have fought each other. Completely shattered all of Rox's previous confidence. Devil fruits are just external objects, after all. If you want to be truly powerful, you have to master the power yourself. Rox, the dark fruit is not what you understand. Yuan's indifferent voice drifted away. At the same time, countless shadows suddenly gathered. It turned into a real abyss, completely enveloping Rox. The devouring power of the shadow and the devouring power of the dark fruit pulled at each other. It is obvious that shadow has the absolute upper hand. The darkness that gushed out of Rox's body was completely submerged by the shadow, and all the power of the dark source matter became part of the shadow. Rox's strength was rapidly depleted. Even the shadow within his body began to become difficult to merge, and there were signs that it was retreating. In this collision, Yun did not remove the power of Rox's shadow at all, and Rox still remained in the amplified state. Even so, Rox is no match for Un. It is conceivable how insurmountable the gap between them is. This scene in the sky completely stunned Garanshing, Garp, Roger and others. Rox, who had just been so ferocious and had been surrounded and killed by all of them, was now struggling like a beast trapped in a cage. The shadow, which is far more terrifying than the power of darkness, shrinks unmoved no matter how the darkness churns and explodes. Rox's eyes were burning with rage and completely filled with darkness, so much so that it was difficult to distinguish between the whites of his eyes and the pupils. He is about to unleash his final conqueror's power, and tear apart the surrounding shadows. But suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. A black shadow could no longer withstand the pressure of power. The shadow, having reached its limit, suddenly exited Rock's body. His breath plummeted instantly. The roiling and boiling darkness dissipated with a bang and was merged into the shadow. However, Rock's shadow contained a power that was exactly the same as the surrounding shadows. Cough, cough, cough. Rock started coughing violently, blood gushing out, and a fatal sense of exhaustion spread through his strong body. He exploded too violently today, and has already hurt himself. Furthermore, his shadow was unable to merge because it had reached its limit. From the beginning to the end, Yoon never took the initiative to contact the state of his shadow, otherwise Rox would not even have a chance to talk to Yoon. Before realizing the ability of the dark fruit. If Yoon's strength were to explode at full strength, he would have surpassed Rox by a hair. Now realize the fruit of darkness. It has evolved into new abilities. How could Rox be his opponent? Bang! Rox fell from the sky like a kite with a broken string, and hit the ground hard. This was the first time that the pirate overlord showed such an embarrassed posture. Galoo! There were sounds of people swallowing due to nervousness. Rox lost like this. One punch. Or rather, a fight. Defeat the Rox. How can it not be shocking? Jai Sheng's mind went blank, as if his computer was down, and he suddenly didn't know what to do. The other members of the Knights of God were also confused. Dealing with Rox is difficult. As a result, another Yoon appears who is more powerful than Rox. How to deal with this? Roger's eyes were slightly lowered, and he looked at Rayleigh without any trace. Both of them wanted to retreat. Rox will definitely not survive. Even if he were alive. I'm afraid Yoon wouldn't let him become a threat. As long as Rox dies, it will be their turn to fight. After witnessing Yoon's terror, Roger and Rayleigh had no desire to be enemies with Ron. This is no longer a matter of strong mentality. The power Yoon showed was like an insurmountable chasm, leaving no one with any idea of transcendence. Or in other words, confidence. Damn it! How could you be so strong? Garp murmured blankly, his eyes suddenly losing their luster. Yoon's sudden outburst shocked them so much. Even Garp couldn't accept it for a while. Ahem, I didn't expect Lousy to fall into your hands in the end. Rox stood up from the ground and wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth with his sleeves, full of reluctance. Back then, he was just a kid who could kill with just a look. In 1 month, it has become a mountain that is difficult to shake. Rox suddenly felt very regretful. He should have killed Yoon decisively when he had the intention to kill, so that today's disaster would not have happened. It's a pity that because of his initial confidence in the dark fruit, he still chose to let Yoon go. An unprecedented level of frustration gripped the Rox. If I say that I won't kill you as long as you surrender, you shouldn't be able to accept it, right? Yoon leaned forward slightly, his voice without any emotion. From beginning to end, it was a game between him and Rox. Even when Yoon helped Rox fuse the shadow, Rox was still thinking about how to get Yoon's secret if possible. But now it seems that it can't be done. Ha 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 ha! Let Lousy surrender to you? What a joke! Yoon! Lousy should have killed you directly in the first place. Listening to your sweet talk was the worst decision Lousy ever made. Rox sneered darkly, with a fearless arrogance. Yoon shook his head helplessly. Your biggest mistake was not to come to the Valley of the Gods. Rox was slightly startled. Naturally, he wouldn't understand what Yoon's words meant. In that case, you can go to hell. The young man bathed in the dark noble purple light raised his palms. The shadow at Rox's feet suddenly transformed into a three-dimensional shape again, and crashed into Rox's body. A special devouring force slowly escaped from Rox's body. Rox's body froze, and an unprecedented panic appeared on his face. He hadn't even thought of that. Yoon can actually control his shadow. What's going on? Lousy has clearly used the dark fruit to check his own shadow. There's no way he has your ability. Rox roared fiercely, veins popping out on his forehead. He clearly felt the power in his body rapidly draining away, including his domineering aura. My own shadow is devouring my own power. This was the first time Rox encountered such a strange situation. As he struggled, darkness surged, but it still couldn't stop the shadow's devouring speed. But Rox reacted quickly. Even my own dark fruit couldn't resist the power of Yun. If he really used some tricks on my shadow, it would be normal that the power of the dark fruit could not be tested. But Rox still can't accept it. I can't accept being tricked. I can't accept my failure. Aun! Laozi will never let you go. Laozi will definitely be waiting for you in hell. Rox roared madly and unwillingly, struggling desperately but to no avail. This scene made Jilanxing and others feel a chill in their hearts. Rox's power is disappearing. What on earth is this? Not only his strength, but even his domineering aura is weakening. It's as if he is being swallowed by his own shadow. Even Rox can't resist this method? They were all stunned for a moment. Yun lowered his eyes slightly and said calmly, "It's no use, Rox. Your dark fruit power is no match for me. Give me all your strength." Shadowborn! The words fell. A purple light suddenly flashed on his body. At this moment, the shadow inside Rox's body also burst into a purple fluorescence that penetrated the darkness. Buzz! A strange energy completely enveloped Rox. Every bit of strength and domineering in his body was devoured by his own shadow. Laozi, even if I go to hell, I will not let you go! Along with Rox's last desperate and unwilling roar, the evil and oppressive darkness completely dissipated. Rox stopped breathing. The dull expression finally froze as he stared at Yun with resentment. Wow! A gust of wind blew by. Rox's body turned into dark ash and dissipated in the wind. A generation of pirate overlords, a strong man who almost subverted the world, a monster who could compete with the Knights of God, finally died. But in place, leaving a shadow of Rox. Devour all of Rox's power, including Conqueror's domineering shadow. Rox is dead. I don't know who murmured first. It brought everyone's frozen thoughts back to their senses. Rox is dead like this. Wait. Garp suddenly realized something was wrong and asked in shock. But why is his shadow still there? Even after death, the shadow remains. Jilanxing opened his eyes wide and couldn't help but exclaimed, looking at Yun, who was surrounded by a dark purple light with shocked eyes, his expression indescribably shocked. What did you do to Rox's shadow? At this point, everyone realized something was wrong. The shadow of Rox is still there. And it also exudes the same powerful aura as Rox. It must be something Yun did. Yun dispersed the terrifying fluctuations around him and landed on the ground again. Shadow Rox stood quietly beside him, like an emperor's guard, waiting for the emperor's orders at any time. It's a pity that Rox died like this. I'll leave you with a thought. Yun chuckled and looked at Shadow Rox with satisfaction. This is the move he just learned. Shadow Clan. In the Shadow Emperor form, the shadow power can completely subdue the shadows of others and use them for its own benefit. The difference from ordinary shadows is that the shadow descendant can devour all the power of the original body, including Haki, even Conqueror's Haki. So say it. Now Shadow Rox is the real second Rox, possessing the powerful strength of Rox. It also has the ability to devour shadows given by Yun. New Rox. Stronger Rox. It's simply an incredible method. However, the Shadow Clan is unique. Just like the Emperor's personal guard, Yun can only create a Shadowborn being. So, he chose Rox. The shadow that inherited all of Rox's power is even more terrifying than Rox. It sounds simple, but actually completing it is not something that ordinary people can do. Thinking. Garp's mouth twitched, his expression changed drastically, and he didn't know what to say. You actually took Rox into account. You have such a sinister mind. Jilanxing's face turned pale and he gritted his teeth. This scene was beyond expectation. Rox is dead. As a result, a more powerful shadow was left behind and was controlled by Yun. This result is worse than Rox not dying. Whitebeard was extremely shocked. Rox died just like that. Yun defeated Rox with just one move. What's going on with this shadow? Doesn't it really have the power of Rox? Achaku frowned and said in shock. He suddenly had a very bad feeling. Hiss, what should we do in the future? Silver Axe took a breath, his mind racing. Rox is dead, and we should be relieved. But now I can't let go of that breath. Kaido and Charlotte Linlin were also in shock. The existence they feared the most was easily dealt with by Yin. What could be more shocking than this? The world has really changed. Golden Lion Shiki took a deep puff of his cigar, his eyes flickering, as if he saw a stronger pirate overlord appearing. If Yun wants to become the new pirate overlord and take over all the power of Rox, they have nothing to say. And no one dared to object. There is no power to oppose. But many pirates don't want to face such a life anymore. Huh! Jialin Xing took a deep breath and took a sudden step forward. Although you are very strong, but it may not change your ending. The sea needs only one ruling voice and will never allow a more powerful one to exist. Rox is so. You too, Un. His tone was very serious, and his expression was extremely solemn. As a member of the Celestial Dragon's Knights of God, he couldn't just watch Yun rise and become a stronger being than Rox. The best solution. This is where Yun was executed. Garland, can we really beat this guy? A member of the Knights of God behind St. Garen whispered uneasily. Yun restrained his aura at this time and looked like an ordinary teenager. But that feeling of oppression has always lingered in everyone's heart, like a nightmare that cannot be dispelled. You are the Knights of God! Jialin Xing suddenly shouted, his voice and expression were stern. The Knights of God! You should be fearless. Defend the rule of the Celestial Dragons. And they also have the 5 elders who have never been used and are always in top form. There must be hope to turn the tide of the battle. As soon as Jialin Xing said this, the scene suddenly became depressing again. Yun glanced at him calmly. You're still thinking of causing trouble for me? Then I'll accept it. Those who don't want to continue to get involved can leave now. Yun's voice was very soft, but it sounded like an emperor giving an order. Those who don't want to continue to get involved can leave. This sentence touches everyone's heart. Roger immediately turned his head and looked at Rayleigh. Next second, the two retreated quickly and rushed towards the coast. Roger! You guys! Garp was stunned. Un, I hope I can fight you in the future. Ha ha ha, see you later. Roger laughed and left without hesitation. Rox is dead. It was clear that Yun was no match for him. It would be wisest to get out of this chaotic battle as soon as possible. Roger's pirate group had already boarded the ship under Jabba's command, waiting for Roger and Rayleigh to return so they could evacuate at any time. See you later, Roger. Yun waved his hand slightly. I didn't take Roger's actions seriously. Then I'll leave first. Achaku smiled awkwardly and ran away immediately. I'm going back to Amazon. Flame Flower and Shaki left at the same time. You guys, wait for Lousy. Silver Axe simply chose to run away. All of a sudden, the leaders of the Rox pirates led their remaining men to evacuate the Valley of the Gods. The speed is so fast that it is a bit jaw-dropping. Yun, I don't plan to get involved in what happens next. Whitebeard took a deep breath and said goodbye. Yun waved his hand indifferently. Tell those guys that the Rox pirates have disbanded, and I have no interest in forming my own pirate group, so stop bothering Lousy in the future. Whitebeard was startled and was very surprised by what Yun said. The Rox pirates are disbanded. Unexpectedly, Yun did not choose to replace him. I don't even plan to form my own power in the future. So what does he want to do? Un, you are so surprising. The Golden Lion Shiki floated into the air and said to Un, let's go together. They may not be able to stop Lousy's ability, and of course, they can't stop you either. Since they want to cause trouble for me, I will just play with them. It's none of your business. Yuan did not ask to stay, and he did not need the power of the Golden Lion Shiki. He was enough to deal with these people by himself. Yuan, we won't abandon you at this time. Kaido and Charlotte Linlin have no intention of leaving. Forget it, knowing too much is not good for you. Yuan suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the Holy Land of Marijoa, with a rare solemnity in his eyes. He felt the gaze from the throne. It seems that the most mysterious existence has awakened. Or maybe your actions woke the other person up. Anyway. This war seems inevitable. So it's better for Kaido and Charlotte Linlin not to get involved. Shiki, take them with you. Yun called out to Shiki. How can this be, Yun? Do you look down on Laozi? Kaido immediately retorted. Charlotte Linlin's face darkened and she asked unhappily. What do you mean? Yun smiled helplessly. You have no right to interfere with what happens next. I'll go have a drink with you after I'm done with it. Kaido and Charlotte Linlin naturally didn't want to. But Yun's slightly authoritative words made them dare not refute. And they had a feeling, even if they didn't leave, Yun would have a way to get them away. If that is the case, it's better to leave on your own initiative. In the end, Golden Lion Shiki, Charlotte Linlin, and Kaido flew away together. In a moment, the Valley of the Gods has become much quieter. Staff Officer Crane also commanded the surviving Marines to leave the Valley of the Gods. The battle between those monsters was beyond the capability of ordinary people to participate. If they stayed, they would only die. Almost all the survivors left. On the empty ruins of God's Canyon, only Yuan, the Knights of God, Cyborg, Garp and others were left. It was extremely empty for a moment. But the atmosphere was even more grim. Yuan, what did you just say? Cyborg came closer and asked in surprise. You really don't want to be the second Rocks? Shadow Gyuki, Shadow Azure Dragon, and Shadow Mama stood quietly and did not attack Cyborg, which gave Cyborg the opportunity to get closer. You are not qualified to interrogate me, Yuan said coldly, and a powerful aura suddenly rose up. Instantly, the sky and the earth changed color, and the wind and clouds surged. The storm that had just been silent awakens again. Cyborg's expression suddenly changed. He thought there was room for negotiation, but he didn't expect that Yun's attitude towards them was completely different from that of Golden Lion, Kaido and others. There's nothing to say. Don't think that the celestial dragons really have no means to fight against you. No one in this world is invincible. Jialan Xing's face darkened and he shouted coldly. He was a little anxious. Why haven't the 5 elders arrived yet? Did something unexpected happen? And just at this moment, suddenly, a whistling sound was heard over the Valley of Gods. 4 huge shadows appeared in the Valley of God at an extremely fast speed. A giant python with sharp wings on its back was hovering in the air, dancing with its black wings that glowed with cold light, and had 2 sharp claws on its abdomen. A black cloud of flames appeared all over its body, lingering around its monster-like body. Its head was like a bird's, and its beak was spewing intense red flames. It made frightening cries that sounded like the wails of countless resentful spirits. 5 elders Maz Saint. Mythical beast species, Isyanitan. A huge monster figure fell from the sky, and when it touched the ground, it sank directly into the ground like a fish constantly swimming. The ground around him began to turn into yellow sand, and in a flash it became like a desert. It was a figure similar to an insect, but its body was extremely large and surrounded by a frightening black flame cloud. There were no eyes on its head, only a huge mouth surrounded by sharp teeth, as if it could swallow everything. 5 elders Peter St. Mythical beast species, Sandworm. Another huge figure landed and rushed over. It looked like a giant wild boar, with huge fangs filled with an extremely terrifying sense of oppression. Its 4 hooves were black, its body was strong, and it was surrounded by the same black flame cloud. The strange thing is that the ground seems to become more moist with his appearance, as if there is suddenly more water vapor. 5 elders Vacheli St. Mythical beast species, Fingxi. The last figure is even more terrifying. The lower body is completely skeletal and shaped like a horse's bones, like a skeleton knight awakened from hell, with black flames surrounding it, giving it a majestic aura. But the upper body was a strange human body, revealing the appearance of Nashaulangshing. He held a samurai sword with a strong cold glow in his hand, galloped on horseback, and rushed over with great momentum. 5 Elders Nashkalang Saint. Mythical beast, Horsebone. All 5 elders show up. For legendary mythical beasts in demonic form. The situation seemed to have been reversed in an instant. When the Knights of God saw the 5 elders appear, their faces showed a little joy. Reinforcements finally arrived. Cyborg and Garp breathed a sigh of relief. If all 5 elders come, then we will be more confident in fighting against Yuan. What do you say now? Jialanxing raised his eyebrows and said confidently. I don't know what's wrong with Yun. He lets all the pirates leave, but he also reveals a flaw. He can be killed just like rocks. Jialanxing thought silently in his heart. But when he looked at the young man, he did not see the panic and shock as he had imagined. Instead, the wanton and arrogant smile on the boy's face gradually spread. Now? Yuan looked around and laughed heartily. Now you are surrounded by me! The demonic forms of the 5 elders have all arrived. Itsuki Tenma who breathes fire. The ferocious Fengshi with huge fangs. The terrifying sandworms that shuttle through the desert. The eerie and terrifying horse bones surrounded by sword energy. 4 figures surrounded by black flames, all of them were awakened forms of mythical beasts. Looking from a distance, the huge and ferocious dark figures looked extremely terrifying. Judging from the situation, Yuan was completely alone at this time, and was completely surrounded from 4 directions by the arriving 5 elders. There is also the Knights of God led by Garen Xing and strong men such as Steelbone, Garp, and Zephyr. No matter how you look at it, the situation is extremely unfavorable to him. But at this moment Yuan's face was filled with a wanton smile, and his aura was arrogant and domineering, showing his invincibility. The sentence, "You are now surrounded by me," shows his arrogance and dominance to the fullest. The smile on Jialansheng's face froze, and he looked at Yuan as if he were a madman. He felt incredible at Yuan's crazy behavior, but for some reason his heart beat violently. This bastard! We can't let him get away! Garp clenched his fists, his face looking somewhat solemn. So many people, can they really kill Yuan? What's going on? Is this guy alone? Where are the other guys in the Rocks Pirates? The bird's beak was spewing flames. His eyes were cold and his voice was dull but full of extraordinary surprise. The Marines retreated too? What on earth is going on here? Fengshi shook his huge head, the flame cloud behind him roared, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. This battlefield doesn't look right. What happened during the time they were here? That figure. Gyuki? Why is his shadow here? The sandworm's body was half buried in the ground, and its eyes could not be seen on its head, but it could still sense the changes on the battlefield. It just happened to find that shadow Gyuki. He was immediately shocked. Gyuki? Wait, that's not Satan's appearance, what's going on? The old man with horse bones was also confused. His expression was stunned, and the sword energy in his body froze for a moment. Jialanxing said in a deep voice, "Why did you come just now?" The tone was very dissatisfied. Fengshi suddenly thought of something and his tone became angry. Some force here affected the transmission. We were halfway through the transmission when we suddenly appeared in the sea. If it weren't for Eugene Tianjin and my water control ability, we probably wouldn't have been able to get there. Fengshi, an outlier among the devil fruits. It has the ability to control the flow of water, otherwise there wouldn't be a layer of water vapor around it. Jialanxing's pupils suddenly shrank, and he frowned and said, "The transmission was interrupted?" Judging from the time, it should be the time when Yun burst out with power and defeated Rocks. Is it because of Yun's power? But what force could have caused the 5 elders' teleportation ability to fail? Yuan's eyes moved around, scanning the 4 demonic beast forms, and his smile became more playful. The power of the soul spreads quietly. You use the power of your soul to comprehend the incarnation of the mythical beast species, Izutsu-tenshin, and comprehend the power of Izutsu-tenshin. You use your spirit soul to comprehend the power of Fengshi form. Understand the power of sandworm form. Understand the power of horse bone form. Huh! It's just an avatar? There was a strange look in Yuan's eyes, a bit of surprise. He didn't know much about the 5 elders either. But the 4 guys that appeared were just incarnations. It seems that the real bodies cannot be teleported. Then what about Gyuki Satan? What he transmitted was his real body. Yuan realized that there was some power he had not yet touched. However, even as an incarnation, it still cannot prevent him from comprehending the power of their devil fruits. After all, the power of this incarnation is not much different from that of the original body, it just has certain limitations. In this way, the 5 abilities of the 5 elders' mythical beasts were completely controlled by Yuan. If the shadows of all 5 elders were summoned, their expressions would probably be quite interesting. The transmission was interrupted. It should be the impact of the release of the Shadow Emperor's domain. It seems that their transmission ability is not as strong as expected. I have now mastered the power of the Tremor fruit, and it seems to be able to touch space. If I can comprehend the Dorador fruit, I should be able to create a move that is more powerful than the 5 elders' means of teleportation. Yuan thought to himself, but didn't take the arrival of the 5 elders seriously. Like a boy who gives away money, he happily sent over his devil fruit ability. That shadow is rocks? Jin Tianjin and others noticed the shadow shape beside Yuan and were shocked again. Cyborg, what happened in the Canyon of the Gods? Rocks? Where are Roger, Whitebeard, and the others? The sandworm puffed up its breath and shouted loudly. Cyborg smiled bitterly. All members of the Roger and Rocks pirates have withdrawn. As for Rocks, as you can see, only the shadow that absorbed all of Rock's power is left. The eyes of the 4 devil-like monsters fixed at the same time. Rocks is dead? His shadow is still here? Wait, what's the matter with absorbing the shadow to absorb Rock's strength? Ma Gu's voice was gloomy and his expression became more and more surprised. How long has it been? What happened here is too unbelievable. Yuan's method is to use his own ability to control Rock's shadow. Then, he used some strange method to make Rock's shadow completely carry all of Rock's power. The real Rocks is already dead. Cyborg's wry smile became even more intense. This kind of thing is unbelievable even for myself, let alone the 5 elders who heard it. It turned out that he killed Rocks. The sandworm incarnated by Saint Pit let out a roar of extreme shock. He believed that even if Rocks died, he must have been killed by the Knights of God. But now he is told that it was Yuan who killed Rocks. So what is Yuan still doing here? The others left Yuan behind? The 5 elders have not seen Yuan in his Shadow Emperor form, and still regard him as a strong man on par with Rocks. How could the shadow fruit be so powerful? Izuku Tenma was also confused. Yuan, who possessed the shadow fruit, not only killed Rocks, who possessed the dark fruit, but he also controlled Rock's shadow. And what about the power that consumes Rocks? The 5 elders felt incredible again. I always feel like I've missed something very important during the failed transmission. The shadow fruit? No one who has seen the power of Yuan would think that it is the shadow fruit. Garp interrupted coldly. It's not the shadow fruit? Then what ability is that? Feng Shi asked subconsciously, rolling his eyes, which were bigger than copper bells. Garp was too lazy to answer this useless question. Cyborg said awkwardly, No one knows his devil fruit ability. Yun's devil fruit ability becomes more mysterious in everyone's eyes. What other devil fruit could it be if it's not the shadow fruit? But the shadow fruit is just paramecia. How can it have so many abilities? Everyone's thoughts are in a closed loop at this moment. This makes Yuan even more mysterious. So you just let those pirates go? Ma Gu glanced at Gangu coldly, his eyes full of oppression. He didn't dare to lose his temper with Jialanxing, so everything was borne by steel bone. The words that cyborg wanted to say got stuck in his throat, and he remained silent. He knew very well that this was not his problem. If we hadn't let those pirates leave, we would now be facing the combined forces of the Rocks and Roger pirates, and among them was Un, who was even more powerful than Rocks. You can say that. The 5 elders were lucky to see Yuan in person. Don't worry about those pirates for now. The most urgent thing is to arrest Yun and get his secret. Galan Sheng suddenly spoke up to stop the 5 elders from questioning him. If the celestial dragons could possess the secret of Yun's strength, and this powerful and strange devil fruit ability, then they would be able to establish a more solid rule. By then, no pirate can be a match for the celestial dragons. Jialan Xing has a deeper plan in his mind, or rather, a fantasy. Kasa Yun, we finally meet. Izuna was circling in the sky, its cold eyes staring at Yuan, a mysterious flame burning from its beak. You can't get away this time, Ma Gusen said coldly, emitting a biting cold aura all over his body, like a knight from hell. Run? Yuan glanced at them calmly, dug his ears carelessly with his little finger, and said helplessly, Are you old guys too old to hear well? You have been surrounded by Laozi. I never said I was going to run away. The 4 huge figures were stunned at the same time, as if they couldn't believe what they heard. In this situation, Yun still dares to be so arrogant? The eyes of the 4 giant beasts suddenly became fierce, full of real killing intent. However, Garen, who had seen the power of Un, suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. It was true that Yun had never thought of leaving. He also asked Kaido and Charlotte Lin, who wanted to help, to leave. What is he going to do? Is he so confident in his own abilities? You know, even rocks can't fight against the power of the world government alone. What did you say? You are so arrogant that you say you surrounded us? I think you are looking for death. Izuna opened his bird's beak, and a raging red flame instantly turned into a sea of fire and spread towards Yuan. The sky is burning with fire. The terrifying temperature made the surrounding space appear illusory and distorted. This is the power of the awakened form of the mythical beast. Yuan's eyes were slightly cold, and he snorted coldly. Who told you to be in the sky? Get down from here! The ruins on the ground were covered with an extremely deep shadow that was profound and mysterious, accompanied by Yuan's cold shout. Brush. An invisible attraction suddenly enveloped Yijin Tianjin in the sky. The flames he spewed out were blocked by the flashing figure of Shadow Rocks before they reached Yuan. The special devouring power burst out, and actually absorbed all the fire in the sky. Aiza Tenjin no longer cared about the shock of the flames being swallowed by the Shadow Rocks, because he felt an irresistible violent force suddenly enveloping his body, as if several towering mountains were falling on him at the same time. What kind of power is this? There was a hint of panic in Yijin Tiana's tone. Next second, the huge body fell headfirst to the ground. Like a meteorite, it smashed into the ground, leaving behind a huge crater. What's going on? Saint Mass! The sandworm dived into the ground and shuttled to the place where Yijin Tianjin fell, and was extremely shocked. Izuna's real strength was actually suppressed from the sky to the ground. What is this power? Damn it! Why does it look so much like the power of the dark fruit? Izuka's voice sounded, both shocked and angry. Even he himself was stunned by this incredible result. What nonsense are you talking about? The dark fruit is Rock's ability, but Rox is dead, the sandworm roared, but there was a faint feeling of something being wrong in his heart. It's definitely the suppressive power of the dark fruit. Absolutely right. Yijin Tianjin came out of the deep pit, but stayed on the ground without flapping his wings to fly high. He was afraid of being knocked down again. The suppressive power of the dark fruit? Is it because of Rock's shadow? Feng Shi was slightly surprised, then guessed. But he immediately felt it was ridiculous. But how can Shadow possess the power of the dark fruit? This is simply too outrageous. What's more, if the devil fruit host dies, the devil fruit will be, randomly, reborn in the sea. If Rox is dead, There's no way he can still have the power of the dark fruit. Dark fruit? How did Rock's shadow absorb Rock's power? Someone in the Knights of God suddenly exclaimed. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. Yes. How did Shadow get Rock's power? Now they are even more confused about what is going on with Yun's ability. Could it be that Yun had mastered the power of the dark fruit before? This is even more impossible. Garp shook his head firmly, denying his guess. Devil fruit uniqueness. There can't possibly be two identical abilities. But how to explain the power displayed by Yun? Not to mention Garp, even the Knights of God and the 5 elders were confused. Moon, what kind of power do you possess? Jialin Xing asked with a serious expression. Yuan couldn't help but laugh. I don't know whether to say you are naive or stupid. As long as you tell me your secret, I can consider letting you go. Jialin Xing's expression remained unchanged, but his tone had a hint of negotiation. I say, you haven't figured out the situation yet. Let me go. I should be the one considering whether to let you go. A faint purple light appeared in Yun's body, revealing a deep and powerful meaning. Why waste your time talking to him? Catch him and take him back for research. The horsebone old man suddenly roared, and the magic sword in his hand suddenly condensed into a sharp slash of more than 10 feet in length and blasted out. He lost his patience and didn't want to waste any more time. At the moment when Ma Gu launched his attack, the other 3 figures took action at the same time. Yijin Tianjin, Fengxi, Sandworm. Almost at the same time, they rushed towards Yuan. The dancing black flames made the Canyon of Gods look like hell. A powerful aura rose into the sky, disturbing the thick clouds in the sky. It's just an incarnation, not worthy of my personal action. Yuan sighed softly, completely losing interest. The power of shadow is activated silently. 4 dark shadows instantly appeared beside him and began to change. In the blink of an eye, 4 huge shadows that looked exactly like the 5 elders formed and stood beside the young man. Shadow of Izuna. Shadow Seal. Shadow Sandworm. Shadow Horse Bones. The sudden change immediately plunged the atmosphere into a dead silence. The 5 elders were stunned on the spot. When the 4 shadows in shadow form appeared, the 5 elders were all stunned. What's going on? He can just imitate us. The menacing monster was stunned. Jialin Xing's face suddenly fell, and he said in confusion. What exactly is Yuan's ability? If the Gyuki form was perhaps created by Yun through combat simulation, then how do we explain the forms of the other 5 elders now? The 5 elders appear in less than a minute. Could it be that Yun could create a shadow of the same form just by looking at it? The aura of these shadows is similar to that of Gyuki. It's not that simple at all. Cyborg suddenly shouted. As the only person to have fought against the Gyuki form, he has a lot to say. The shadow formed behind these 4. The pressure from his aura is no less than that of Gyuki. The old man with horse bones twitched his mouth, and his face turned pale. Not only is his aura similar to Gyuki's, he even felt the same sense of oppression as himself, which further demonstrated the power of this shadow form. The 5 elders were stunned, but Shadow was not. Brush, brush, brush. The shadow Yijin Tianjin instantly took off into the air, and the wings formed entirely by shadows flapped, revealing a violent aura and rushing towards Yijin Tianjin's body. The Shadow Sealing Boar and Shadow Sandworm attacked rapidly and were extremely ferocious. On the other hand, the Horse Bone Shadow, although it looked powerful in the form of a horse bone, unfortunately the weapon in its hand could not be formed, and it just rushed towards the horse bone body with bare hands. Just shadows! Smash them! Yijin Tianjin spewed flames from his beak and rushed out brazenly. Boom! 2 demons with the same outer contours collided fiercely, making a loud noise. Yijin Tianjin was stunned for a moment. Is the power of shadow so strong? The power of Shadow Izumiya is not weaker than the original body at all. Next second, Izuna summoned endless flames directly, forming a sea of fire that enveloped itself and spread to the surroundings, instantly covering the shadows. Even our shadow form can never have our abilities. The flame in Izumi Tenna's beak became even more violent, as if it wanted to use the terrifying flame to burn its own shadow form to ashes. But what happened next was totally beyond his expectations. The flames that touched the surface of Shadow's Jin Tianjin form were visibly absorbed into his body and annihilated. The most terrifying thing is, a group of misty shadows suddenly burst out, emitting scorching heat. It's actually flame in shadow form. The same ability as Izuna Tenshin. The moment the shadow flame erupted, it completely blew away Jin Tianjin's flame, demonstrating its extremely strong power. What kind of monster is this? Jin Tianjin's icy pupils shrank uncontrollably, and his tone was extremely shocked. The same appearance can also explain it. But how come they have exactly the same abilities? Shadow Izuna not only possesses all of Izuna's abilities, but also has some of the power of the Shadow Fruit and the Dark Fruit. There is also a bit of domineering power added by Yuan. So he is really stronger than this Izuna Tenjin. In shock, Jin Tianjin was attacked by Shadow again, and was completely passive. The shock in his heart made him panic. The battle broke out. It wasn't just Izuka Tenjin who felt this way. Feng Shi and Sha Chong encountered the same situation. Feng Shi has the power to control water flow, but Shadow Feng Shi also possesses this power. The sandworm's abilities are not obvious, but it has a very strong regenerative ability. Even if its body is broken into two pieces, it can still heal. The Shadow Sandworm is the same. In comparison, Ma Gu's battle seemed much more normal. It was simply a clash of strength. Surprisingly, even though the old man with horse bones was holding the magic sword, he still couldn't gain the upper hand. A violent battle broke out, shocking everyone. These shadows have real devil fruit powers. This is impossible. One of the Knights of God shouted in surprise, his face showing visible panic. Everything that's happening before my eyes completely subvert their cognition. The impossible happened. What's going on? Could it be that the five elders are no match for Shadow? This ability is too terrifying. The faces of everyone in the Knights of God changed. The scene at this moment made them feel a chill in their hearts. It seems that it doesn't matter whether the five elders come or not. It might even be better if they don't come. At least the shadow that Un controls is not as terrifying as it is now. But it's too late to say anything now. Jailan Sheng had a gloomy face, and was filled with shock and anger, unable to speak for a while. He also pins his hopes on the five elders at full strength. But now it doesn't matter whether you come or not, which is hard to accept. What power do you possess? Garp shouted coldly, raised his fist, and rushed forward angrily. The exploding conqueror's domineering aura formed red lightning surrounding him, making him look extremely fierce. However, but he didn't even have the qualifications to get close to Yuan. Yuan's lips curled up, revealing a meaningful smile. The power of Shadow Awakening is beyond your imagination. Shadow's power far exceeds any devil fruit. Garp, you're not worth my effort right now. Boom! An even more violent momentum swept over. Shadow rocks appeared like a ghost in front of Garp's path and punched out with all his strength. The air exploded and a series of hissing friction was heard. The lightning formed by Conqueror's domineering power shines. It's also a domineering punch. Boom! Lightning strikes. The earth is collapsing. The devastating impact spread in an instant, making the already ruined battlefield even more dilapidated. Finally, Garp retreated back, his face grim as he cursed. Damn it! It's a problem even if Rox dies. Garland, what should we do now? A member of the Knights of God asked Saint Garen in a low voice. Jalinshin gritted his teeth and said bitterly, There is no room for retreat now. Let's fight together and find a way to defeat him. At least we must ensure that we can leave alive. He knew it very well in his heart. It's simply unrealistic to want to defeat Yun. Shadow Rocks is completely equivalent to full-strength rocks. There are also Shadow Gyuki, Shadow Blue Dragon, Shadow Mammoth surrounding Yun, and even his own shadow. It's a question whether these people can get close to Yuan. Jialanxing reacted suddenly. I'm really surrounded by him. It turns out that what Yuan said about you being surrounded by me was not a joke at all. Jialanxing wanted to jump up and down and curse at this moment. How on earth did this monster appear? But he remained calm. Go! No matter what, we must fight to the death! Jialanxing suddenly gave the order and rushed out first. The Knights of God followed closely behind. Shadow Rock's expression could not be seen clearly, but he seemed to turn his head, and then suddenly rushed forward, attacking madly as if he was not afraid of life or death, without any defense, and all his punches were offensive. Depend on! Jialanxing couldn't help himself and burst into swear words. How the hell do we fight this? How to fight this? This is exactly what Jialanxing is thinking at this moment. Shadow Rocks possesses special shadow power, which not only offsets most attacks, but also because it is a shadow, it is not afraid of injuries. Even if he is injured and damaged, Yuan can still use his ability to repair him. This is the perversion of the Shadow Clan. It's totally equivalent to a puppet. A fearless puppet that doesn't need to defend itself. Therefore, it was more difficult for Jialanxing and the Knights of God to deal with him than to deal with the real rocks. In the first encounter, 2 members of the Knights of God were injured due to carelessness, and flew backwards and lost their fighting power. To make matters worse, Shadow Gyuki, Shadow Blue Dragon, and Shadow Mammoth all joined the battlefield as well. Garp and Cyborg were also struggling, with no hope of victory at all. The most terrifying Yuan suppressed them all without even making a move. How could they fight? Can't even get close to Yuan. How to fight? At the same time, above the sea far away from the Valley of Gods, the pirates of the Rocks Pirates couldn't help but look back at the battle waves in the Valley of the Gods. Even though they were far away, they could still clearly see the several huge monsters fighting on the island. Hiss, the other 5 elders have all appeared! Silver Axe couldn't help but take a breath of cold air, but what shocked him even more was the extremely clear shadow. Those shadows are exactly the same as the 5 elders. How did Yuan create them? Stussie's mind was full of question marks. Only she knew that there was no devil factor in Yuan's blood. It was even possible that Yuan was not a devil fruit user. But she immediately denied this thought. If Yuan is not a devil fruit user in this situation, then I am just dreaming. It must be that I didn't detect it well enough, or it could be the special nature of Yuan's devil fruit ability. Fortunately, I still have one last tube of his blood. When I go back, I will definitely study the secret of Yuan's power. Stussie thought silently in his heart. This ability is simply too terrifying. In time, Yuan himself will be able to create a shadow army that fully possesses the abilities of devil fruits. Whitebeard's voice was solemn, but a hint of doubt appeared on his face. He still couldn't figure out what was going on with the fluctuations in the tremor fruit's power on Yuan. Could it be that after the shadow fruit awakens, it really has such a powerful ability that it can even simulate the abilities of other devil fruits? Whitebeard would never have thought that Yuan had truly mastered the power of the tremor fruit. He didn't dare to think about this outrageous result. No wonder he let us leave. He really has the confidence to deal with all of them by himself. Kaido couldn't help but sigh. After leaving the battlefield, Shiki the Golden Lion, Kaido, and Charlotte Lin all returned to the Rocks Pirates' main force. Naturally, they had to return to Beehive Island. Rocks is dead, and there's a lot to be shared. But after calming down, Kaido still felt like today was a dream. Originally, the Rocks Pirates were gathering to attack the Celestial Dragons and Marine, but the battle went through many twists and turns, and Rocks died. But Yuan suddenly became extremely powerful, even invincible. Kaido didn't even react. He just felt that Yuan suddenly became like this. He was not mentally prepared at all, or Yuan didn't show any sign of it before. The sea is going to change completely. Shiki the Golden Lion couldn't help but sigh. Dominate the sea? As long as Yuan is here, no one can do this. That's nothing. Yuan has already expressed that he will not manage the future development of our pirate group, so everyone, just wish you good luck. Charlotte Linlin laughed strangely, her eyes flickering, and her ambition gradually revealed. The only thing she regretted was that there weren't more deaths in the Rocks pirates. This way, we can divide up more of the remaining forces. Ah ha 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 ha. Linlin, you really didn't hide anything at all. Achika laughed, but was also calculating in his heart. Whitebeard and Golden Lion Shiki both have their own ideas. The Battle of God's Canyon is over. World government and marine will definitely be seriously injured. This is their best chance to rise. Rox is dead. Un doesn't interfere. Then they really have nothing to fear. Ha ha! How much you can get depends on your own ability. The Golden Lion Shiki smiled sternly and proudly. Apart from Charlotte Linlin and Kaido, the only one who is most fearless is the Golden Lion Shiki. Because they have a good relationship with Yun. Even if an accident occurs, perhaps we can seek help from Yun. There is no need for Yun to take action personally. Yun can just let Shadow Rocks come forward to shock everything. The other side. The Roger pirates also did not move away directly, but instead focused on the battle in the Valley of the Gods. The appearance of the Five Elders, the appearance of the Shadow Five Elders, and the outbreak of the battle, they all saw it very clearly. Roger looked serious, shook his head and said in disbelief, "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have thought that someone could be so strong. The last time we fought, Un wasn't so scary, and I thought he was as a future competitor, but he didn't expect that this time. Laozi was no longer his opponent." Even someone as powerful as Roger felt a strong sense of frustration at this moment. Rayleigh held his eyes sharp. "If we want to achieve our goal, Un will be an insurmountable mountain. His current ability has created the Shadow of the Five Elders' Devil Fruit ability, and the Shadow of Rocks. With this a force that has surpassed us. Besides, I don't know what the limitations of his ability are. Whether the shadows he created can last for a long time. Sigh, what a mysterious guy." At the end, Rayleigh couldn't analyze any further and sighed helplessly. Jabba and the others also felt extremely heavy in their hearts. The most terrifying thing is Yun's own power. They couldn't imagine any way to fight against Yun. Roger suddenly let out a long sigh, and the smile on his face gradually returned. "Why think so much? We are just fulfilling our dreams. If there ever comes a day when we become enemies with Yun, we'll talk about it then. Ha 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 ha! Everyone! Let's go out to sea again. The world government won't be paying attention to us for a while, so we can have some peace and quiet." Roger suddenly burst into laughter. The pressure in the hearts of many crew members also dissipated a lot. "Oh, I really admire your mentality." Rayleigh rubbed his forehead and said helplessly, but a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, think so much about what to do. Go to sea." The Roger pirates set sail again, heading towards the goal of One Piece. At the same time, Holy Land Marihoa. Between flowers. A mysterious figure with an unclear face appeared on the void throne at some point. A pair of eyes with red glowing outlines were revealed, looking towards the direction of the Valley of God. Throne of the Void. The figure wearing a crown and whose face could not be seen stood up slowly, exuding huge pressure. The next second, the figure suddenly transformed into an indescribable monster and rushed into the teleportation circle. Canyon of the Gods. A storm of battle sweeps across the island. Yun was very quiet, as if waiting for something. The strength within the body is condensed and gradually reaches its peak. The prey that survived on the island were all teleported away through the shadow gate by the shadow coordinates he established on Ivankov's shadow. The next moment, a terrifying aura full of destruction suddenly descended on the Canyon of Gods. It was as if there was just a flash of light, and the whole world was darkened. Boom! The terrifying and oppressive aura spread directly, and the four monsters transformed by the Five Elders were startled at the same time, with great fear in their eyes. They immediately stopped their movements and saluted respectfully in the direction of the creature. Sir?" The members of the Knights of God were stunned, extremely unbelievable. The Lord on the throne of the void actually came to the Canyon of Gods in person. For a while, everyone, including St. Jolin, saluted. Cyborg and Garp were stunned for a moment, their expressions filled with disbelief. To them, this is completely a legendary existence. Now it has appeared. They all stopped fighting and looked up at the approaching figure. Yoon looked up slightly, a trace of surprise flashed deep in his eyes. An indescribable humanoid monster appeared in front of him, its eyes filled with blood and glowing red. The power of the soul surged out, but it was unable to explore its true mystery. Unexpectedly, you actually showed up in person. But it's a pity that he is an avatar like them. Yoon shook his head with regret, not showing any surprise at all. It seems you know a lot. Who are you? A suppressed, low voice came out from the figure with blood-red pupils. The voice was full of majesty, and it was impossible to distinguish between male and female. It was no longer the voice of the original deity. Yoon smiled lightly and said nonchalantly, "According to you, I am a pirate. Your identity?" The majestic voice was full of no doubt, as if interrogating Yoon. "Ha, don't do this!" Yoon sneered. "Now that you have shown up, are you reluctant to let them die? Or do you want to take action against me?" A humanoid monster figure dozens of feet tall looked down, and a thunderous sound sounded. "No matter who you are, you can't change the world. What's more, you're not that person. Even if you have special abilities, you can't change anything." The judgmental words made Yoon frown slightly, seeming very unhappy. But in his heart he tasted the meaning of Im's words. Change the world? Yoon didn't have this idea originally, but now he has. As for whether it's that person, Joey Boy? Yoon sneered. Lousy doesn't bother to be Joey Boy. I don't know if I can change the world, but what if I can kill you? A powerful aura suddenly rose into the sky. The already extremely depressing atmosphere suddenly became violent, and the God's Canyon began to tremble uncontrollably. You are strong, but you cannot overthrow our rule. The giant monster's voice became increasingly indifferent. You're the biggest threat besides Joey Boy. It's best to erase it. The indifferent tone seemed to mean that he was talking about a very ordinary thing. The appearance of Yoon has already threatened, but in Im's eyes, there is no way to overturn their rule. In other words, only Joeyba's ability can save the world. But Yoon has indeed become an uncontrollable factor, and Im wants to kill it with his own hands. You all stand down. These words are the order given by the nameless humanoid monster to the Knights of God. Yes. St. Jolin was shocked in his heart, but he reacted very quickly and immediately led the members of the Knights of God, Cyborg, and Gark to leave quickly. Don't let people know too much about him. The ruler of the world should be as mysterious as a legend. Yoon's feet flew into the air and gradually floated up until he was level with the huge monster. The power of shadow surrounded him and slowly spread. He didn't care at all about the fleeing Knights of God and others. Your ability makes me a little curious, Yoon said lightly, his palm resting on the handle of the knife at his waist. The dark purple luster on his body became more and more intense, and he was filled with a kind of nobility that could not be offended. Huh! It is indeed the power of the shadow fruit. You can develop it to such an incredible extent, so you have some abilities. Im's incarnation let out a light sigh, with a somewhat surprised tone. She could feel the fluctuation of Yun's essential power, which was indeed the shadow fruit. The other powers that are not inferior to the shadow fruit may be the changes brought about by the awakening of the fruit. Even as a master, Im doesn't fully understand all devil fruit powers. Especially the nobility and dominance that overcame all things surprised her even more. It is even suspected that the second Joey Boy appears. But it's not Nika's ability. This is the weirdest thing. Actually, if I chop you here, you won't die. Why don't you come and fight me in person? Yoon smiled softly and invited, his eyes cold. Be bold. You are worthy enough to meet my lord. After hearing this, the 5 elders suddenly shouted at Yoon. Yoon lowered his eyes slightly and said coldly, Lousy is too lazy to pay attention to you ants, And you are still calling them here? Roll! Conqueror's Kamui. Crush! Conqueror's Kamui, which is almost condensed into substance, penetrates like thunder from the sky. The monster transformed by the 5 elders looked stunned, with great fear and horror in its eyes. Such solid and terrifying conqueror's haki, they have only seen it from the person opposite Yun. The next second, the 5 elders didn't even make a sound before they were crushed to pieces. The 4 figures immediately disappeared. After all, it is just an incarnation. Holy Land Marie Joya. The 5 elders' dazed figures suddenly woke up and completely regained consciousness. Kasa Yun's power. How do you feel about it, sir? Mashing muttered in a daze. Don't talk nonsense! St. Peter's face darkened and he shouted loudly. No one in this world can stand up to you! That's right! So what about Jiboy? Otherwise he would still be dead! St. Wycherley looked solemn. Mashing said immediately. I have never doubted the power of Sir, but someone can actually alarm Sir him. This has been hundreds of years. Rox is dead, and Kasa Yun cannot be alive. Only Roger, Whitebeard, and Golden Lion are the only pirates left who cannot make any big waves. Saint Nasharang said slowly. They have already acquiesced in Yun's death. After all, it was Yun who took action himself. Who can survive at the hands of him? There won't be another Joey boy in the world. So what if it appears? He will only die once more.